Calling to order the City Council meeting of Tuesday, September 9th, 2025. Welcome to fall. Please call the roll.
Mr. Knoll?
Here.
Satra?
Here.
Ms. Weltman?
Here.
Ms. Bowden? Here. Mr. Lemay? Mr. Gentile?
Here.
Dr. Wong here.
Okay. Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Good evening, Council, to the audience. Did this get back?
Yes.
Our first agenda item is ordinance 2025-13. This is the investment policy that we've seen at several other meetings. I understand there have been some changes made. Peter, Mr. Rantor, why don't I turn to you and let you take us through this. Now, Mr. Lemay is not here this evening, but I think Peter's fairly familiar with some things, and he can take us through it. He can respond. We can have a conversation, and council can decide what it wants to do with or without the presence of Mr. Lemay here. Okay? Peter?
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. Council, I spoke at length with Councilman Lemay last week. We were both out of town. We're just kind of hashing out some of the details that we had. So the copy you have did not show like all of the last couple of changes that we made to it. I was just going to kind of walk you through the changes, and those would be on page 2 under the authorized financial dealers and institutions. So, some of the wording on that was reconfigured, really. We created bullets for everything there and, made some minor wording changes in the last paragraph. So that's what changed on that section. And like I said, that's probably one of the biggest changes we had. There's a cleanup here and there with a couple of the words, like we replaced the reference to ICE. And probably the biggest thing we added to this, I should mention, this was already included in your copy on page 7, is the safekeeping and custody. So Mr. Lemay kind of used his legal expertise to tidy up this section. We talked at length with our investment advisors at Fifth Third regarding exactly, how custody of our assets is with respect to our investments, and he inserted all the appropriate legalese in there. I had misspelled standard before, so I respelled that, better spelled that under the performance standards, and that's what replaced ICE as the benchmark. There's also an extra key in the third line of the safekeeping and custody at the end where it had title, so we adjusted that. But really, there wasn't too much that changed from the original copy that you had, other than those things that I pointed out to you here. Mr. Lemay kind of intimated to me that, he wasn't going to be here tonight. He said he was comfortable with the policy as it was. I know he had mentioned to me that he spoke with you, Tony, about like some of the changes that we incorporated into it based on what you had suggested to him, and this is kind of what we have for now. So if everybody's comfortable with this, I think we're good to go forward. If there's still any kind of questions, we can always defer it to another reading. Mr. Lemay is the finance chair, and I'd like to pay in that respect. If we start making wholesale changes to it, I did talk to him, but I have a good idea where we're both comfortable with any modifications that we might make to it at this point. So
Peter, you said something about Standard & Poor's. Where's that?
That would be on
Page 7 in the green.
It's kind of hard to
Thank
read.
you. Page 7, under performance standards, it's the last sentence of the first paragraph. We had originally referenced SPICE International, the Intercontinental Exchange. That's not the right thing that we wanted to use as the benchmark for our returns. So we're going to benchmark it against Standard & Poor's U.S. Treasury bond indexes.
Can you read that sentence? I'm having a hard time to the green reading
For
it.
the sake of readability, red on green is almost impossible to read.
It is not a great copy.
So it's not just me. I'm very happy to hear
No.
that.
I can't see it.
Good, good.
And I'm not colorblind.
Investment performance shall be benchmarked against the Standard & Poor's 1 to 3 year U.S. Treasury bond index.
Yeah, any good index is fine.
All right, I have a question about that, Peter. I'd not seen that line before. What does that mean, that it's going to be benchmarked against the S&P? What is the requirement? Is that simply for, it's going to be a comparison that's non-binding? What does it mean that's going to be benchmarked against?
We wanted our portfolio to perform if we can. Right now, we're kind of outperforming the market. I don't know that we always will, just based on, all the different dynamics that's going on. But basically, we just want to be able to say, okay, this is where the treasury yields are right now, the most common ones that we normally invest in, 1 to 3 year periods. And, if we have that as the benchmark compared to our dashboard that we have from our finance reports, which kind of tells us what our yield is. You guys see the August up to date. I mean, we're over 4%. We're like 4.1. Maybe the treasury yields now. This benchmark is probably, after the calm down a little bit this week, maybe 3.5 or 6
Right.
in that area. But we just kind of want to have that as a benchmark as to how we're doing versus the treasury market.
Let me try it, Rick. When you say we're beating the market or we're lagging the market, there's always a index which you're measuring against.
Right, I understand
So
that.
you pick that index, and so to say we're beating the market is really meaningless. We're beating a particular benchmark because there might be another benchmark that is yielding a little higher. So we picked this one as a specific one. This one, any of these are good.
I get that. I understand the concept of being benchmarked.
And benchmarking means that we would be able to say we are over that, or we are under, or we are on.
Okay, my question, I guess, if I make it more specific then, is the first sentence has the caution or the reference that it's commensurate with the city's investment risk constraints, because obviously the general market, we're not going to beat the general market because we are constrained in the nature of the investments we can make. They're very conservative in quality and nature. So my, I guess, query is that new sentence that says we shall be benchmarked against the Standard & Poor's, the same qualifier of it being commensurate with the nature of the investments we're making. The Standard & Poor's overall, or Standard & Poor's as it relates to, bonds and,
Yeah.
It's the Standard & Poor's 1 to 3 year Treasury bond index.
Yeah,
You have
I'm
to
sorry.
read
That's the rest
That's
of
what
the
it
sentence.
says, it's just hard to see.
That's probably,
So,
it's in the
and-
highlighted portion, the 1 to 3 year point.
And there will be no generally accepted index that matches our conservative.
oh, I see. The benchmark is limited to the bond index.
Mhm.
Okay,
Correct.
all right. I'm fine then.
1 to 3.
Okay, now I see what the sentence is saying. That's okay.
And the idea is maybe that if they're able to incorporate it into our dashboard report, kind of a cookie cutter report they have for everybody. I know they changed it for us once when we asked them to change something. So I kind of send them back to the drawing board to kind of tweak it again a little bit for us to incorporate that. But they've been very accommodating, and of course they spent a couple hours here at the last meeting.
So my question is this, because this raises a good point in terms of, are you benchmarking the yield? Or are you benchmarking the performance?
Same thing.
No, rate of return is
Well, the
different than
rate of-
yield.
rate of return
The yield on the
for
portfolio at any given moment is different than the performance of the portfolio. Right, so like,
That's the way you would measure a portfolio like this with,
With-
versus the return on that bond index.
right. But do you see I'm saying like the rate of return is different than the yield?
It's the same thing essentially with fixed income investments.
Okay, it's not as I understand it, but if-
Well, the yield on any one investment might be different than the return, but the yield and the return are essentially the same thing for these purposes, because you're measuring it against a bond index
Mhm.
that would be, say, it's up 2%.
Mhm.
And what is our portfolio?
So that's
up
performance.
2%. Yeah, it's performance.
And to take it a step further, I mean, yes, we're probably looking at the yield, but, to your point with the total return, if we're looking at investing in stuff like municipal bonds, I mean, technically the value of those could rise and fall, and that could affect like whatever we're looking at as a total return. So, but for this purpose, I mean, we're probably just looking at the yield would be the simplest thing to benchmark against
Yeah.
without getting extraordinarily complicated.
because taking into account just like the flux in cash, like straight cash position. Yeah, okay.
Good question. Thank you. Any other questions from council regarding the current draft of this investment policy?
Mayor, I sent out a memo to everyone after the last meeting, and some of the suggestions that I had in there, as far as I can see, haven't been incorporated, and I think that they're extremely valuable suggestions. The first one is that I think reviewing the policy every year is overkill. It's not necessary. I suggested 10 years would be often enough. We hadn't done it for almost 30 years, and to do it every year, it just doesn't make a lot of sense to me. So 10 years, and I also said that I thought that we ought to put not a sunshine, but a end date on most legislation like this, that we would force ourselves to review it every 10 years or 5 years or something like that, rather than letting something go for 26 years or whatever this has been.
Or 60.
That it'd be a good practice to have that in all major legislation that affects us on an ongoing basis.
I'd rather see it have a review standard, that it should be reviewed be it 1 year, 3 years, whenever. I don't like the idea of it sunsetting, which isn't necessary if you have a requirement that it's going to have to be reviewed. If it sunsets and
Well, it's not,
and it's missed somehow,
it's
we're
not,
going to lose the policy altogether.
it's not sunsetting.
That was the word you used, sunsetting.
Well, that's not what my suggestion says. It says specifically, failure to conduct such a review will not affect the validity of the policy or ordinance, and council shall take all necessary steps to complete the review at the earliest practicable date. So it
Okay.
doesn't sunset.
Okay.
So Tony,
The only question is how often, I think, should we do it?
my question about the timing, your suggestion, Tony, was, I got the impression it was going to be sort of a more, like a deeper dive every 10 years versus
I think,
maybe like a more, I don't want to say cursory, but just a more, what's the word I'm looking for? Just like not as like, this process was, so in depth. And so I get the impression that you're thinking of something extremely in depth every 10 years versus something not quite as in depth annually. You know what I mean? Like I got the impression that you wanted a real deep dive.
no, I understand what you're saying. I think that the review needs to be as deep as it needs to be.
Yeah.
Every year. And that would be dependent on whether the state has changed their guidelines at all, or whether there's some other major change in the market. So it just needs to be as deep as it needs to be every time we do it. And I would say that we can put a clause in that says we need to review it every time the state makes a major change or Steve can word it, but a change that would be significant enough that we should review our policy.
Peter, how do you keep abreast of, changes coming down from the state?
There's
That would
a couple
affect-
different ways. One, in terms of the investments, I mean, we hear from the investment advisors, there's
Mhm.
also the auditor of state
Okay.
who sends out bulletins periodically on things. Like, one of the things we'll have to do as soon as this is passed, we have to supply a copy of this to the state auditor. Another thing, to kind of come full circle with this whole idea of the review. I mean, this wasn't in there in the original version of this, as Mr. Gentili's suggestion. We kind of talked on the phone 5 or 10 years, and what I had done is I looked up the standard that we generally use in other organizations, like Government Finance Officers Association, and when we prepare our annual reports, we try to comply with all the government accounting rules, and they're like the gold standard for us, and they say do it every year. So when I saw that, I thought kind of like we should do it every year, because that's what they said. So,
Okay.
and like Jackie's saying, my kind of thought is that hopefully we won't have to do so much, because this hasn't been done in, almost 30 years. And
Right.
this is the original policy. It fit on one sheet of paper.
The font is a lot smaller.
Yeah,
But, yeah, well, I mean, I don't care that much about the timing. I just think that we're gonna find that that's too often after it's in practice for a while.
And do you feel that's something that you could incorporate into just your annual, as you did the budget, or, would it make sense and fit into your annual workflow, do you think, to do a reading of it? Like, and to, sort of make sure that those changes coming from the state are incorporated, or, I mean, I know you haven't been here for a full year yet, but what do you think in your gut is the right number versus, I know you said that that's kind of the gold standard.
I would stick to the recommendation just because I try to follow the rules that are set out
Yeah.
by government accountants to follow. And then, my response is that I would try not to make this the kind of process that this year, because I, put in a little bit more time in this than maybe I had otherwise thought or planned that I would. And, it's a great policy, and the investment team has told me that. So I know what we did here is good work. And really, I think kind of going forward, it's just going to be sort of, kind of a routine thing that I think we'll be able to work on. It's something that we could handle like within the finance committee. And, we just kind of talk about it, say, hey, and it says it's, led by my recommendations. The first year I might tell you, I don't think we should do anything with this year. I might try to squeeze that through in January, but your idea about putting it in with the budget, I mean, that's another great idea that I think we could do too. It's kind of undetermined at this point as to exactly how we would or when we would do that annually. But, I kind of like the idea just to do it annually, just to follow the rule. If there's something that comes up, then we know that something came up during the year, and we want to comply with it. There's certain things that we do every year that are kind of routine, and we have a couple of them on the agenda tonight. The amounts and rates resolution, okay, where we put we let everybody know, hey, we're going to put our taxes back in effect, our property taxes in effect for the ensuing year. The other thing we always do is the advance of taxes, which is also down here now. We want to be able to get our money in advance while the county's still collecting it, so we can collect the interest on those funds. And this is really, it's the same kind of thing. Those are like statutory things that we have to do. And to me, it's just like another thing that can be done quickly, maybe even by a motion. I don't know that we have to do anything really, really fancy, but I probably want to discuss it in finance committee with you guys. And then, if the group in the finance committee says, yeah, we should come and fix something, that's when I think that we, bring the legislation to the floor and say, yeah, we did do something with it here. This is the part that tweaked, and then, make the adjustment from there. Otherwise, I think we could maybe just pass by motion that we're going to keep it, the same as it was the previous year.
I think we have to be careful to make sure that when the state makes a change to 135,
Mhm.
that we do a review at that point in time.
Agreed.
Rather than say it should be every December, it should be every December as long as the state doesn't make a change to the
Yeah.
overall rules.
And it might be better to do it at some point, like mid-year or something, at some point in time when we're.
The state can
when-
make a change.
Yeah, well, no, I'm
True.
saying, yeah, but I think it's better than doing it at the end of the year in some kind of, sort of superficial way, because we're going to be focused on a lot of things when we're talking about the budget. And if there are significant things, it's nice to be able to take a little time and talk about impacts, have the community, the community isn't as available. So I agree with you. If something's coming from the state, we need to be on top of it.
Yeah, I agree. I think muddying up the time when we're on the budget, because that's a pretty intense thing, is maybe, March or,
Pick the most boring, what's the most boring time of the
When-
year?
Yeah, exactly.
yeah.
Put it then.
It's all very exciting.
So, then the other major suggestion that I made, that I talked about with Jim, and he said he wasn't sure that he was with it or he was against it, but let me read what I said. You might recall my initiative earlier this year to establish an investment advisory committee. This was and remains a very important idea. My support for the new investment policy would be unconditional if provision establishing such a committee were included. Okay, why is this a good idea? One, the city gains the benefit of local expertise without cost. Pepper Pike and cities like it will always have investment professionals among its residents. When members of city council do not have the financial and investment experience that we currently enjoy, there should be professionals engaged in this important function to help guide us. Decision-making would be enhanced as investment professionals can assess investment performance and assess risks more rigorously than our staff of one, which is Peter. No disrespect to Peter, by the way, when I said that. It would enhance the transparency and public confidence that can be a way to engage qualified residents as potential future leaders of the city. It would help assure the public in general that public funds are being handled prudently. It would broaden perspective and bring outside market experience in challenging the way we always done this thinking. I believe we are currently mired in a thought process like that. We have not always had a finance director / treasurer with a background in investing. Our growing portfolio is a relatively new opportunity. It is uncommon for finance directors in cities the size of Pepper Pike to have the requisite expertise. Many of them are controllers, accountants, rather than chief financial officers, financial treasurers. We are currently blessed with a CFO. So for the times when we don't have all of that going for us, I think that we should have this investment advisory committee. To me, it's no different than having members of the planning and zoning who are members of the community, of the road and infrastructure committee, of the ABR, of the communications committee, of the parks and beautification committee. This is an area of expertise that we don't all have, and although some of us do have it, we won't always have a council that has it. So those are my reasons why I think it's important to have that committee as a part of this investment policy.
Isn't that basically what we're paying Fifth Thirds to do, though?
I
Isn't that what we're paying Fifth Thirds to do?
Fifth Third is a third-party vendor.
Mhm.
We need somebody to oversee them. But when I say that we're mired and we've done it that way,
Mhm.
that's using Fifth Third as our advisor and as our investment manager.
Mm-hmm.
They're filling two roles, and they have an inherent conflict of interest in doing that because they're going to tell us to do what would help their business.
Mhm.
So, that they're two different roles.
I appreciate, I'm sorry, go ahead. I just really appreciate the idea. I think we talk a lot about our openness and transparency. And this to me really lends to that. We do it with our other committees. I don't know how frequently you're thinking about doing this, but I think at least
2 meetings a year, but
so
at
to me,
most.
that's a great way to show the community. It honors our fiduciary responsibility, and it helps us helps us communicate and share information better with the community. And it's my understanding that other similarly situated communities, not everybody is, we are in a good financial position, but it's my understanding that other similarly situated communities have this exact kind of investment advisory commission. And I don't know, is that correct?
Yeah, that's true. And, I didn't make this up out of whole cloth. They have it in Hunting Valley. They have it in Wade Hill, or they did at one time. I don't know if they still do. I believe Gates Mills has it, and perhaps Mayfield Village. Cities with portfolios worth managing would tend to have something like this, to have some outside expertise, not to have hands-on, but to look from the top down. People who have expertise who could look from the top down and help us make sure that we're doing things right. And also whenever we decide we might want to do what they call a beauty contest for managers, to help us with that. You'd have the third come back in and maybe some managers. I think that there's an inherent conflict of interest when you have the investment manager who is also a broker dealer. They may have a quote unquote a Chinese wall, but they still do both things.
Mhm.
And an investment manager who is not a broker dealer does not have that conflict of interest.
Sure, they're doing it,
Well,
it's a business transaction for them, even though they have an ethical obligation and they have their own responsibilities. It is their business, it's their business transaction, and they have an interest on their side.
Well,
Where-
I'm sorry.
No,
finish.
I'm just, and I mean, that is inherent in anybody who does that work for us, that they have their own interests, that they make a percentage or how, their structure is based, they're not doing this as a charitable event. They're doing it as a business. So I think it's good to have someone from the outside have eyes on that. It's non-binding, it's advisory, and it's limited. If it's limited to 2 times a year, I think that's perfect. I don't think we need to overdo it. I don't think we need to have them come in monthly. I don't think they need to scrape through everything.
That would be
But-
overkill.
Yeah, that would be overkill.
I'd say once or twice a year is the right number.
Question.
Yes.
So currently on the finance committee, we only have members of city council on there,
Right.
correct? 3.
Right.
What if we have resident members on the finance committee, and as a whole committee, they could review it twice a year? I mean, would that be something that might be interesting, because we have resident members on all the other committees?
I'm not sure that's true.
Well-
Maybe add them to the finance committee, and that way they're not just coming in twice a year, they kind of know the finances of the city really well. And, I think that might make sense rather than, independently looking. I mean, that's a great idea, I like it, the idea of it, but maybe bring them in to the finance committee as
There
well.
there are two
I
separate
don't-
disciplines that we're talking about.
Right.
One is accounting and the other is finance and treasury.
Right.
And I think that the finance committee is doing a really great job
No,
on
they
looking
are.
at the accounting and making sure that we're reporting properly and the bills are being paid. But this is a separate, special thing that we're blessed to have because we have a portfolio like this. And I don't think that necessarily the people who would be investment experts, somebody like a Joe Thomas, Joe,
I
right?
know Joe very well.
They would not have expertise
Oh,
in
okay.
the management accounting. So I think that that's why it should be a separate group.
Tony,
Yeah.
can you help me understand like what you envision their potential recommendations looking like? I guess I kind of get where you're coming from, but okay, so they meet like once or twice a year and they come out and say what?
They would look at our performance.
Maybe
They
they
would,
help with the annual review.
pardon me?
Maybe they can help with the annual review and
Right.
help Peter
They
out
could
with
do
it.
that, but one of the main tasks they would have would be whenever we wanted to see if we wanted to get a different manager, that they would help with that.
Okay.
They could help evaluate those who would respond to an RFP and want to be our investment manager.
Okay, so that's something that's going to be relatively rare. Like, what would justify 1 or 2 meetings? Like, what would justify a standing committee? Like, who has expertise in municipal finance that would potentially, and what would they say about? I guess my question is, we have a very limited universe of securities we're working with, and I think obviously we have a ton of investment professionals in this community, but this is such a narrow slice of what most people are working with.
So I don't understand why there's anything negative about this.
Yeah.
No,
You're
I'm
saying,
trying,
what would they do?
I know, I'm not saying there's
But-
anything
but
negative about it. I'm
there's
trying to
really
understand the
nothing- There's nothing
necessity.
I see that is a downside to this. It helps us to be smarter about our investments.
Yeah, what I was going to weigh in on is, Tony, what I appreciate is that you're looking at the long term. I think that currently we have a council who has some professional, Tony's background in and of itself,
Yeah.
our community is very lucky to have somebody like that in the role that he is in here helping us. We can't guarantee that that's what a council is always going to look like. And Jackie, I know you have a background in finance too, and Jim has some limit. Like, so we're very fortunate to have those types of professionals on the council. That may not be in the future. And I think that looking to position the city to have some of those professionals available and taking an active role in the city, I think is a win-win. And the fact that it's a little bit limited. I mean, you may only have 2 meetings a year. There may be a year that they need a couple more, but that somebody is willing to lend their expertise to that. I think it's actually a really good idea. And I appreciate you bringing it up.
Let me get, well, first, Peter, I think, had some thoughts, but let me, before I turn to Peter, just give you some of my thoughts about this. Because I know Mr. LeMay does not favor this idea, because it's come up before. And apparently you've had some recent conversations where you apparently had some concerns
We had a
about it.
conversation where he wasn't sure which way he.
Okay.
I'd
The,
love it if gentlemen were here to have that.
My concerns are, one, I do not agree that these, our advisors, have a conflict of interest. They don't have a conflict. If they have a conflict of interest, they probably shouldn't be doing the job that they're doing right now. They don't have a conflict of interest. These folks are fiduciaries to us. They have an obligation to us. They don't, that is their obligation. My concern about, and that is why we pay them, and they provide good advice. My
You can pay
concern
somebody who has
about,
conflict of interest.
well, suggest they had a conflict of interest.
They do.
Well, I don't agree. My concern about bringing in residents is this is a specialized field, municipal investment. We have some remarkable people in this city, I agree with that, who are very good at both investing, management, the spectrum of that. They are not municipal investment people, and they will come in with a perspective, as Ms. Godick points out, that is, far beyond the limited investments that we are entitled to make. I just don't see this being an added value. I think that so far as the thought that, gee, if one day we want to go shopping for new advisors, we can always solicit, advice or recommendations from those people in the community who may have, thoughts about that, or to help in that process. But that is not a standing committee for them to do it. Here is my suggestion. That if this is something that council wants to consider, it would have to be detailed, in some detail. It's not something that obviously is just going to be generally described in an investment policy. What I would suggest is that we treat that as a separate matter from this investment policy issue. And instead, if council wants to undertake that consideration or evaluation, that we do so, as a standalone, and allow Mr. LeMay to be back to participate, and so we can all benefit from his thoughts about why or why not he's comfortable with the idea just some of my thoughts. Peter, you had some thoughts that I
I'm gonna throw
interrupted
in
you.
one more thing. When you say that the investment people we have here would be, at a higher level, fixed income investing is a part of what all good investment managers do. They, you've heard of the 60-40 portfolio for retirees, 60% in equities and 40% in fixed income. They all do it. This is the easier, less complicated part of what they do. So they would all be familiar with it. And so that expertise would come with anybody who has who works in the investment field. And the conflict comes when you have a broker dealer, they're selling product to you. It's the same bank. I don't care if it's a different division or whatever. And their managers or the investment guys are selling us stuff that is underwritten by the bank or that they are buying on our behalf. There is an inherent conflict of interest in that. And you can say that there isn't, but there is.
No, I don't think that's how they're compensated. The manner in which they're compensated, I think, cuts against that. Peter, what are your thoughts about this?
There are many. What I would say at this point, though, is that these are kind of mutually exclusive things. I would not want to pass an investment advisory thing and make it incorporated into this already, and it's kind of getting to be a monster of a policy that we have here right now. So I kind of like to just bifurcate that out, do what we have to do now. If you want to look at an investment advisory committee, yeah, we do have to look at the scope of what we're going to ask them to do, because kind of what I'm hearing from different people is different things than what I would think. And I mean, we have to think about that, maybe look at somebody else's advisory committees, if that's the way we're going to go down. I know I've had a number of conversations. I mean, Mr. LeMay drove home and dug deep on our guys as to how they were all compensated. And basically the answer is, I mean, you get compensated one of two ways. Everybody gets a cut of, when there's securities purchased, we're not paying anything, okay? But everybody gets the same cut. There are some advisors that get that cut, plus they get some kind of additional fee from the client, from us, that we would pay. I mean, we're not paying these guys anything right now. There's a lot to this conversation. And I mean, you met these guys. They're stand-up people. I've worked with them a lot in the past. I'm not here to be their defense attorney or their proponent, but I know they're good people, and there's plenty of work that I have to do here to kind of adjust or modify or fix or whatever you want to say. And those guys aren't necessarily one of them, for sure. Because plenty of things I want to do, and that's not something I want to fix right now. But if we want to look at the investment advisory committee, to me that's just totally mutually exclusive of what we're doing here. These are two different things, and I mean, we'd have to figure out what we're going to create and what we'd have them do.
Just to clarify.
I think that what you're saying is that we looked into finding the best investment advisor possible, because we only asked one person to do that. I'm more skeptical than that. And I think a healthy skepticism is something that you always should do when you're dealing with this much money.
And that's totally fine, Tony. If you want to do a, search to make sure we have the best advisor, I'm totally supportive of that.
I'm not proposing that.
But again, that's almost another separate issue, right? I don't know that we need to have a standing committee to do an investment advisor review.
Well, I just think that it's I think being misunderstood somewhat, that having some built-in, I don't even know, a conflict of interest, or if you want to call it finding, the best situation periodically and reviewing it, knowing that you're getting good value or best value, has nothing to do with the integrity of the people who are involved. They could easily not even know that they were not maybe performing as another entity would. I mean, it has nothing to do with their character, their integrity, their training, any of that. It just has to do with us doing our fiduciary duty and making sure that things are regularly reviewed. I could, and I know there were members of the committee who had concerns about money that we had sitting in not earning interest a year ago and before, Peter, you were here, and thought that it was not the right choice. That was not because of a lack of integrity. That was a concern about performance, decision-making that needed to be reviewed. I'm very appreciative that it finally has been reviewed and we are getting an appropriate return on that money that was sitting there every month, an extremely significant amount of money. This is very much the same thing where we want to make sure we're having the best look at it. And I don't see, I would be fine with once a year, having someone have a look over. I don't understand what we're afraid of. I guess that to me is what I don't understand why it's so concerning and so troublesome to people, that people who have some expertise in the community look at it and give their opinion. We don't have to listen to them. We could appreciate what they say, consider it, and take their advice, not take their advice, come back to it in a year and, and use it as an advisory thing to look over for the next following year. There's so many options, but not taking that as an opportunity, I really question why. What is so threatening about having some community members with expertise look at our finances once a year?
There's nothing threatening about Mike.
So then why not do it?
Quite
Why is
honestly,
it, is it
I
a
am not
burden?
convinced that it's a productive use of anyone's time. I
Well,
mean,
they-
obviously,
they
this
can
is a
make their
larger
determination.
discussion, and it seems like everyone wants Jim to be here, and I think is correctly a separate issue, as Peter suggested, from this. So I suggest we table this until the next meeting and get back to the matter at hand.
The problem is, though, that when we table things that are suggested by a member of council, quite frankly, they get buried. So like
What's
talking
funny is
about,
I tabled something last week. I requested it to be on the agenda today, and it is.
well,
So
okay.
you just have
Well,
to
Jackie, for 8 months, I
request it.
requested talking about planning for the Gates Mills Trail and designing it because the council wanted to be involved and start ahead, and I got ignored. We've talked about putting the elevator on the agenda because it's very important to have dignity for people who are handicapped when they come to this building. And the project has either been blown out of proportion so that it's we can't move forward with it, or it doesn't get on the agenda. I could come up with numerous, I'm happy for you that what you asked for gets put on the agenda. I don't know that that is the norm, and we don't need to talk about that right now because that's not the main thrust of what we're talking about. We're talking about,
You are talking about it right now, though.
You're talking about
I'm
it, and there's
talking about
never,
it.
hold on, there's
No.
never been a single thing that you've asked to be on this agenda,
Rick,
that you've asked me that I've not placed on an agenda.
I
That has
put
not
on the
occurred.
record every meeting for about 8 months.
Not
and
occurred.
Emailed you about the Gates Mills Trail, wanting to see planning and start planning ahead so we could do a really good job, and it got rushed at the end. There's a record of that.
No, you're
No,
mischaracterizing
that
things
is correct.
grossly,
You can
Ms.
go listen to
Goldman.
the meetings, but that is
Grossly, you're
irrelevant.
mischaracterizing
I
things.
only brought it up because Ms. Godick brought it up, and I had to correct that. Finally, I just want to say that I just think this is going to get tabled and shelved because that's the strategy. If somebody else maybe brought up something that they were interested in, and that might come on the next agenda or 2 agendas later or something, but I don't think this will.
Mayor,
Prove me wrong then.
can we request that this item particularly be put on the agenda for the next meeting?
Sure, that's
It
not a
sounds like
problem.
everyone wants to keep
It's
talking
never,
about it.
never a problem. Dr. Wong?
Question. Why don't we have residents on the finance committee?
We initially did, we invited residents early on, and residents did not want to participate. We put one on, and it soon, the person absented himself from the committee and was no longer on it. I just asked Mr. Byron, are we permitted, though, to do it? Is there any charter issue?
No, the committees are a creature of the ordinances, and we do allow for.
Okay, so we
residents on
we could put
committees.
one on the committee, to your point.
Yeah, I mean, I think it could serve a few purposes, but also have someone that's familiar with investment investing or wanna, just to know the finances of the city and know what's going on for that review. They don't have to come to every meeting if they don't want to. The quorum, if you had 5 people, would still be 3, 2 resident members. And I think that could serve both purposes and try to say, well, we want you to have a big overview of everything. You don't necessarily have to have an accounting background.
Well, again, this is a treasury finance function, which is not.
Right, no, I
so it-
understand that,
So it
but
is different, but I would second.
Yeah, why don't we put it on?
Jackie's motion to table, if that's what that was.
I guess, sure.
Okay, so unless someone objects that we have to have a vote on this tonight, let's pass it to the next meeting, and we can resume this with a little more background, and perhaps, someone participating who's not here tonight. And I think that would be fair. Okay, our next agenda item is Resolution 2025-16. It is Mr. Rankator, why don't you take us through this?
Okay, so this is the resolution where we pass our tax rates for the ensuing year. So for the tax year 2025 and the collection year 2026, we want to reinstate our property taxes as they currently appear on the county's tax duplicate. It ensures that we have, the same amount of revenue coming in next year as we do this year. Our mills do work a little bit different than they do at the school. So like when our property values go up, our revenue will go up, and the property values go down, our revenue will go down. It's a kind of a direct effect because we have charter mills and inside mills, but that's kind of how that works. We have a bond levy, general fund mills, fire, police, pension, and a bond levy and a fire levy.
All right.
I think I might have mentioned one of them twice, but that's the makeup of our millage, and we just kind of want to have that. But this is a statutory thing we have to do with the county's budget commission. If we do not pass this, then we will not be able to levy any property taxes for next year.
So you're saying this is a good thing for the council to adopt?
It's definitely a good thing, kind of a mandatory thing, or else we'll have like a big budget hole next year if we don't pass this with some taxes on it, yes.
Okay, can we have a motion for the adoption? Then we
Yeah,
can.
I just had one question. If you don't mind, there was nothing on this that was redlined from the previous year, right? This is everything is identical to what we've done in the past, except for just the year.
yes.
Correct.
Okay, all right. Thank you. I'm sorry.
Okay, can we have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Any further discussion? Roll call, please.
Mr. Knoll?
Yes.
Ms. Zatra?
Yes.
Ms. Weltman?
Yes.
Ms. Gogan?
Yes.
All right.
Oh,
Ms.
there's
Wong?
still enough.
Yes.
Next,
We
we,
voted without Tony?
Do we
Oh.
remember now?
I mean, we have enough votes.
I know, but still, like,
I think I hear the door.
he left the room. I don't know what to tell you. Ordinance 2025, we're all not taking a bathroom break, though. Ordinance 2025-17 is an ordinance authorizing a contract with the County Board of Health. Tony, I hope you'll forgive us in your absence. We
That
passed the budget.
was an ministerial thing. I knew that.
I didn't think you really had much of an issue.
Yeah, I knew that the tax rates were
All right.
correct.
We need to renew our contract with the County Board of Health. As you all know, we rely upon the County Board of Health to be our public health service provider. We actually do a lot of work with the County Board of Health. They oversee our septic programs, and we get a very good bang for our buck out of what we do with the County Board of Health, because we utilize their services because of our septics far greater than many communities end up utilizing the Board of Health. So unless someone has some questions about this, I would recommend that we suspend and that we adopt this ordinance.
Move to suspend.
Second.
Any discussion? Roll call, please.
Mr. Knoll?
Yes.
Ms. Zatra?
yes.
Ms. Weltman?
This is to suspend?
Yeah.
Yes, but if we could have done this before, longer, I mean, I know it's you know, a regular thing, but if we could have just done it on more than one reading, but yes.
Ms. Godik,
Yes.
Mr. Gentili,
Yes, and I'd like to vote yes on the prior resolution.
We will add
If I'm
your,
permitted to do so.
to the extent we can, we will add your vote to it.
Dr. Wong. Yes.
The,
There's no objection. If everybody agrees, you can do that.
okay. Any objection?
No.
Hearing none, your vote is added, Mr. Gentili.
Okay.
We need a motion to adopt 2025-.
So moved.
Second?
Any discussion? Roll call, please.
Mr. Newell,
Yes.
Ms. Atrach,
Yes.
Ms. Weltman,
Yes.
Ms. Godik,
Yes.
Mr. Gentili.
Yes.
Dr. Wong. Yes.
Next, we come to our fifth item, Resolution 2025-18. Again, Mr. Rankator, why don't you bring forward why we need to advance taxes in accordance with the Ohio Revised Code?
This is another one of those things that we like to do every year to keep the money coming in, like keeping our cash flow up. So as the county collects the property tax, what they do is they dish out advances before they issue the final settlement. Those advances are money, and we can take those, we can invest it and earn interest on it instead of the county having it sit there and having them earn the interest on it. That's why we want to do this. Always a good idea to do it every year. Having worked in the county auditor's office, not everybody does it. It's surprising, but it's definitely a smart thing to do to improve our cash flow and kind of how our investments work here. It's almost, it definitely helps us give us income for our general fund budget. So yeah, we want to keep doing this whenever we can, and we can. Here's our chance.
Are there
Okay.
any downsides to doing it?
No.
I certainly can't think of any, no.
This is
No.
one of those things that it's county, state red tape. We shouldn't have to do this every year. I talked about having a standing resolution, and that was not possible. But you'd always want to get your money whenever you can first.
I mean, I
You
think,
wanted the permanent ordinance saying it was a standing request.
Yeah.
And they don't accept
They
that.
won't accept it,
Yeah.
right, that's what I said. We
I-
tried to get a standing order, but they won't do it.
I think all entities who are on top of it, like you are, Peter, want to do this. It's our money, why wouldn't we get the return?
Get your money early and often. That's the rule.
Positive cash flow.
We have a motion for the adoption of Resolution 18.
So moved.
Roll call, please.
Mr. Newell,
Yes.
Ms. Atrach,
Yes.
Ms. Weltman,
Yes.
Ms. Godik,
Yes.
Mr. Gentili,
Yes.
Dr. Wong. Yes.
Okay. Next, we continue our discussion on a discussion of virtual meetings and remote attendance. Mr. Byron has prepared something. This is something I think that we need to talk about as to how this is best accomplished. So it's in front of you. There is you'll see in the draft that has been circulated here, there is really a plug number of, 2 meetings. You can miss 2 meetings, or attend it remotely twice. The question becomes, what is not in here really are standards as to, well, under what circumstances can you do that? Is it because of illness? Is it because of travel? Is it because you just want to hang out at home? I don't, there needs to be some sort of, in my view, standard. I don't think it should be solely left to the discretion of a chair of either the presiding officer of council or of a committee. I think it's good to give that person discretion if the number that is established, and 2 may be a good number, there's good justification to go beyond that number. Okay, then you're into a chair type decision making. But it's frankly uncomfortable, as someone who chairs these meetings, I don't want to either be the bad guy saying no, and I really don't love the idea of being going along to get along, and gee, someone can just go away. It's my preference, and I think Ms. Zatrock has recited in the past her preference that people come to meetings. That's what we're all
It's our
elected to
job.
do, come to meetings. So I leave it to your conversation.
But I know Kathy was the one that brought this up, but I think maybe we should, before we dive into the details, because we're only seeing this as we enter the room, I think maybe if we could just go around the room and see if we are in favor of the concept without respect to the details, before we, manslaughter this thing.
Okay, that's fine.
Kathy should.
I don't, what Dr. Wong's view on this? Is she for or against this idea?
Well, I really appreciate, Steve, you getting this to us, at least the draft. I don't know, there needs to be a number behind that 2025. Since we're discussing it, could be 18, I guess, if we wanted it to be. But I agree that if you're able to be in person, we should be here in person, especially for council meetings. This came about because the communications committee is looking at vendors, and some of them can't attend in person because they're not here. And sometimes it might be easier to have like a virtual meeting with them because we have to meet with them multiple times. So in different vendors.
There's nothing that stops you from having telecommunications with
No, I know.
people who
Right, when you're
are
in person.
proposing.
But, when people have, a job that maybe goes from 7 until 6 every day or 8, it's kind of hard sometimes to show up for every committee meeting in person. So,
You talking about a vendor or an elected official?
no, just a committee. Just like resident on a communications committee, but not necessarily a
Are we talking about council meetings or committee meetings?
committee meeting.
Aren't we talking about both?
And both, actually, but, it's just sometimes we need more meetings than the once a month or the twice a month, and sometimes a virtual meeting might be in order, but that's why this came about. And we might gain more resident participation if we have more virtual meetings too. So I think it's reasonable to look at this and have a limit and some standards, especially for council meetings. Of course, we all want the elected officials here, but like in Scott's circumstance, he couldn't be here for a few months. So it would have been nice to have his voice and have him participate remotely. So Scott, why don't you tell us your view?
Well, I do think that it would be nice to have that option. It is going to be a question of how many times you allow it. And there are going to be certain circumstances where it makes sense that there be maybe more than one or two.
Right.
But I don't know who makes that judgment. Should that be a decision of council per time? Should that be decision of the mayor? I don't know. The other thing too that we have to consider with all this is the technical complexity of it. It's a bit complex. It's doable though, so I'll just say that it's doable, and if you go that route, then it can be done.
I think that the ordinance would set the limits, and that's getting into the details, but it shouldn't really be, as the mayor was saying, shouldn't be up to his discretion or anybody's discretion. It should be, we should spell it out in the ordinance as to what the limits will be on, especially council meetings.
I have a question, Mr. Byron.
Yep.
Do other cities have limits like that?
No, I haven't seen that.
So we would be the first.
But I can also tell you that it's not used very often. There may be somebody who's out of town and they're needed for the quorum to attend. And so it's used as sort of an emergency procedure if you need a quorum for something that requires immediate action. But as a general rule, if somebody's on vacation, they're not checking in to the council meeting. Just in my experience in the other communities.
So when you say no one else does it, you're talking about your communities that you're
Correct.
familiar with.
Correct.
Okay.
But they have an ordinance for it in place.
They have an ordinance that would allow it if, if somebody, and we've, one community had a charter review commission this year and had attendance by a couple of members via telephone. And because they were out of town. So it can be done. It's not a regular thing by any stretch.
And by having an ordinance in place, we don't have to have it be regular, but we could have it available.
Yeah, I have a couple thoughts. I think it's really important to have this option. I don't know, in my experience here, everyone is super responsible and in person
Right.
if possible.
Yeah.
So this is one of those situations where I don't know that we need a limit now, and that could always be revisited in the future. I can't picture anyone on this council like flagrantly taking advantage of remote attendance options, right? Like, who knows what comes down the path, but for right now, it's, like, you don't want to put anyone in the position of being the sort of police of determining, or the teacher or whatever, like, yes, you can miss, no, you can't, you've been gone too much, your excuse isn't valid. So I would be fine with no limit, because I don't see this being something that's used often. I do think it's important to have in place for, life happens, right? Like you just, who knows when any one of us is going to want to participate in an important discussion and not be able to for whatever reason. The other thing, I don't know if it makes sense to make a distinction between council meetings and committee meetings, because to my mind, especially when you're trying to get resident participation in the committees, I mean, I can picture it making a lot of sense to do some committee meetings just all virtual, period. I know there's people who would love to be involved in like ARB or something, but it meets on weekday mornings. Like, that's just not an option. Or, like for the Roads and Infrastructure Committee, the only time I think that makes sense for us to meet is during the week. And, I have to take a couple hours off work, which like I'm happy to do. But I think that would lend a lot more flexibility and encourage greater community participation. So I don't know if it's worth having that distinction, but I'm supportive of the idea, because I really don't think that anyone's going to take advantage of it.
I'd like to say though, one thing, Jackie, is I think we have to, we should create an ordinance that'll stand the test of time.
Mhm.
And I trust everyone here to be here when they can, but I don't know future council
Yeah.
members. So I think we should provide for.
But I don't know that I see what you're saying.
You have rules and we have charters and we have to prevent the worst instincts of people.
A couple things. No one is elected to permanent position, right? So there's always the electorate to hold someone responsible if they're not showing up for meetings. And we
That takes a
can,
while.
max 4 years, right? And we can also revisit any ordinance at any time and amend it.
Right.
And I know that that's not the
Yeah, I
easiest
think
process, but I guess I'm inclined to trust people to act like adults. I don't foresee it being a problem.
And as I said, I think a healthy skepticism is important. And so we come at things in a little different way. But I still think we should have an ordinance that stands the test of time rather than saying, well, we'll pass this, but we'll change it. I don't really like that.
I don't think
idea.
it'll need to be changed.
I don't
I
really like
think
it.
if we're-
Cause, like maybe like either like medical illness with like a doctor's note or, and approved by the mayor, but not more than 4 in the whatever period of time or whatever, like 2 in a period of 6 months, or I don't know.
So Steve, did other communities discuss having a limit, or did it not even come up?
Didn't come up.
Yeah.
Now, all of them have discretion of the chair.
Uh-huh.
So
That seems fair.
if there were abuses, the chair could address it with the person who's not in attendance and say, you're missing too many meetings and taking advantage of the situation.
That seems like a reasonable solution to me.
So I worked,
Oh,
I was just, are we talking about committees and council
Yes.
meetings now?
Yeah, it's municipal bodies or public bodies.
But, and it was, as I heard our discussions, some people wanted some of the committee meetings to be virtual. Is that
No, I just sort of mentioned like maybe it makes sense to have two separate standards for
Right.
full council meetings and committee meetings. Like, I'm not saying that that's what we need to do. I'm just saying maybe that makes sense.
The only reason I brought that up is if people are thinking about, well, we'll, for a committee, you can do that all virtually, in some instance. That has to be, there are technical limits to that, so that would have to be taken into consideration.
I appreciate your technical expertise on these, Scott, and bringing that up. I've expressed trepidation with virtual meetings in general. It's something that I believe that all bodies meet better together in person, that those interpersonal reactions. I just remember having meetings on Zoom that it's like you don't have the same rapport with your colleagues that you do when you're actually physically in the room with them. Now, I will say that my stance has softened a little bit. Knowing someone that was unable to be here and attend meetings out of something that was not in their control. And it broadened my viewpoint a little bit. But I will just, like, Jackie, I understand where you're coming from with the no limits. However, I think that limits are actually really important. I think that it lends to the importance of meeting in person, and to just leave it that it's completely open-ended, I think is a little bit too vague. I would like to see something that is a little bit more concrete, that it's a like a skeleton or an outline to go from. There may be circumstances that warrant something more, but I think that just saying, oh, there isn't anything, I appreciate a standard. And I think if we're going to take the time to really delve into this and look at it, it can't be rushed. I think that, like, I like having this discussion. I like hearing where everybody's coming from on it. I think it's going to allow us to build a better ordinance when that comes, which it may take us 4 or 5 meetings to get there, but really evaluate it from all angles. So, like, the technology piece, how this looks like from a committee meeting, how it looks like from a council meeting. And, I guess I'm trying to understand, if everything's all virtual, like, public participation then. So we're not allowing public participation on a virtual, or like right now, okay? You have to come in and speak. So if we move those meetings to a Zoom type format, that everything's virtual, are we then opening up those public comments in a different way that we're not currently allowing? And what does that look like? I'm not saying that it's bad or good. I just think that it's something that we have to evaluate, like what that means, how that's going to look, et cetera. So I'm still very much on the fence. I'd like to really understand where we're going with this, what the intention will be, and what the ramifications of it are, because we have a sworn oath, us as council members, to participate and be here. And as much as possible, I believe that we need to be in person.
So, and I share some of your concerns. I lived through virtual meetings, both here, but also on the school board through COVID. It was a way to keep your head above water. We ultimately came in and met in person distance because we were more effective as a body sitting far apart. And it was important. And we felt our work was important and we needed to be there. That being said, I am well aware of friends and in my own personal life, having family members, I guess it could be any of us who become ill, aging parents, issues with children, things like that. So I would like some flexibility for my colleagues. I just think that I don't know that setting a standard where people are virtual too much, and that doesn't mean the same person necessarily. It could be different people. It sort of concerns me. I have a less of a concern, like as Kathy mentioned, for a committee, particularly when it's a very good example, actually, when you're talking to a vendor and it has to be sometimes during business hours, and it can't be in the evening or at 8 a.m., for example, or 7 a.m., early, before the vendor is available. I have less of a concern with that. I have more of a concern with rolling it out too much for this meeting. I don't mind a few. I think that's fine. I know I personally would have maybe availed myself of it on one occasion, which was, it was cutting it close, getting to an emergency. But it was, I managed it. So it would be nice to have a little bit of an option, but I don't know about having it opened up. I think it's wise to be cautious with something like that.
It's like, for example, tonight, because Jim's not here, it would have been nice if he could have participated remotely. I mean, that's like a perfect example of why this ordinance would be important to have as an option. It doesn't have to be an always. And we could say like a stipulation, it has to be approved by mayor or presiding officer of the committee or council. And I mean, we could start off with that and see how it goes.
I'd
and
almost,
change it
yeah.
later.
I'd almost rather just have two or some number we choose than having to come and expose like personal medical information or personal family members' medical information. I somehow think that there's something a little off and an invasion about that. I suppose if it was about me, I would, accept that I had, I had become elected. It's another thing to talk in detail about someone in your family who's ill. I don't know that it's not fair to them. They didn't choose for you to be in an elected position, and I would hesitate to do that.
I mean, we could just, for now, talk about committees and then come back to council later, if that's easier for everybody.
I just wanted also to reiterate that if you're talking about a vendor who wants to attend, we're allowed to do that.
Do
Absolutely.
that, and
Yeah.
you couldn't be here. So I guess the point is that if the vendor could only meet, say, between 9 to 5, right? And
I see.
one of you was at work, how would you
They
make
can't
that happen?
participate in that.
That was my kind of unique area that I think is a little different. Everything else, I agree. I think it's preferable to have the vendor at least be on the screen and have you here. But if that happened, I wouldn't want to miss out on a vendor. So just, it's a thought. I don't know. I haven't had that experience on the committees that I'm on. So I don't know if that's a realistic
It is a
concern.
realistic.
And I will say this, when we discussed in the communications committee, the idea of a vendor or somebody like that appearing virtually, it's the technology to do it on a kind of a small scale is easy. So, and we're taking that into consideration in just about everything we're going to recommend.
Isn't it going to be extremely rare when council is engaging with vendors? This is not something that happens. What council's engaging in, it seems to me, is evaluating what do you want to see in a broad way, generally. And then it's an administrative responsibility to then try to identify, that professional, be it an engineer or, or in the circumstance of what you're talking about on communications, to get a bid package put together and then, pushed out to vendors, not a vendor, but vendors. And it just, I understand the idea of while you're trying to develop thoughts, particularly on communications regarding, well, what is the universe of possibilities of what we could do? Okay, but we're talking about a pretty finite process there for one task that the communications committee is undertaking.
Well, I was thinking about, for example, if we had somebody who's designing a park or something like that, and they wanted to appear at our meeting or even our council meeting, it would be fine if they were up on the screen and making a presentation here if they couldn't make it in person.
Right, and they can do that right now. Right, you're exactly right. They can do that right now. What we lack is the technology
Right.
to let them do that right now.
Yep.
And that's what your
We
committee's
need, we
working
need
on.
that
But
technology.
it came up because we were looking at vendors and we were gonna zoom in with vendors on the communication committee, like during business hours. And then Steve said, you can't do that, you don't have an ordinance in place. And so it had to be a single person, because if it was more than two, it would be the whole committee, and then it would be a committee meeting, and we're not allowed to have committee meetings virtually. So that's where
But that was a council issue, that, or a committee
committee.
elected person issue. That's not the vendor's issue.
Well, here's my question. So were those conversations with the vendors, was that part of your visioning process to understand what the options are, where you wanted to go? Was that why, okay, that's okay. That makes sense.
So instead, Scott, that would then here, one-on-one, rather than having everyone.
Having everyone meet.
listen in. But, I mean, Scott, well, we're lucky, he's an expert on the AV equipment, but for other things,
But none of the rest of us are experts. If you weren't that person, who would have?
I think that, and that's not only in this process, it's in every process when you're evaluating things. I think
Yeah.
most of the time, as I understand it, from the vendors that I've talked to, not only in communications, but in other situations, that you usually deal with, they appoint one person to be that person who understands it and then can explain it to the rest. Because it's difficult it becomes almost unmanageable to have all these people meeting at the same place.
So I have another, just like a thought / question, because I attended a meeting at one of our neighboring municipalities, and they do have like a hybrid thing. Are we only talking about council, or would we allow committee, department chairs and stuff to Zoom in? And what would that potentially look like? And like, I think that, because we are not the council people, aren't the only ones who attend these meetings. We have our law director, we have Sheila, we have Don, and, et cetera. What does that change, and what does that look like for others? I think we need to look at the entire meeting
Did
too.
Did you see a meeting where
I
like a
did,
department chair?
Yeah, they
Yeah.
were all virtual, and I will tell you, it was, I didn't love it. I went to see, I didn't, well, because what I think is really helpful is, again, after the meeting or during the meeting, somebody is reachable. It's when you have that opportunity to talk to them. And it's part of why I like the interpersonal connections that are made at meetings. And this is why I favor it. But there were, their building inspector, their engineer, their law director was in person. Their finance director was virtual, and they were on multiple screens. And when it was their time, they talked. But then when the meeting was done, they were all gone. Like there wasn't any continued conversations that happen, which I like that happens in this room, good, bad, or otherwise. But I think it's something that we need to kind of think about as well. And I've kind of let you know where I stand on it, but I don't know how other people would think about it. But I think we're not just looking at us in the universe. There are other bodies, other people.
I stand by that. A lot, having a lot of people remote in meetings was not good. It was better than nothing. We did it. We kept our head above water, but it wasn't as good as being here.
well, we could make in the ordinance that.
That's why a
be
limit
here
would be
unless-
okay.
Yeah.
That's why I think a limit.
Unless it's approved by the presiding.
I'm just
officer,
kind of
and there's a
spitballing,
limit
but
to it.
All right, time out. Mr.
I think,
Gentili.
I think that, we kind of have the sense that people have some skepticism about it, but I think we really need to look at the details. So since
Yeah, we
this
have
is a
just seen
discussion
this.
draft, I assume that means this isn't even a first reading.
That's right.
No,
So
and that's why I had suggested to Mr. Byron, let's make this a discussion,
Yeah.
because I anticipated there'd be this sort of
So if we could
back and forth.
have a chance to read this either before the next meeting or the meeting after that, and, dig into the details, because the details obviously are more important. The concept is kind of everybody thinks it's kind of good or maybe not so good.
I think that's fair the way you're characterizing.
Yeah, so.
Yep, good idea.
Either
Yeah.
next meeting or the meeting after.
Okay.
Dan, can you just tell, what did you use as kind of a basis for this? Was there a certain community that
Well,
you?
remember the initial permission from the state
Okay.
was legislative. And so that served as the basis when you may remember that the state had given a certain time period and then it was going to end and then they extended it.
Mhm.
And then some communities, and Pepper Pike did this, allowed, I think, 2 more months after the state authority experience.
I think we
And,
did.
and so we did 2 more months. The language of the ordinance is based on that, a comparable language with some additional stuff just in terms of adding in the definition of municipal body, because the state, it's public body in the Ohio Revised Code. And then also the limit on attendance, that wasn't in state code.
Okay, okay,
Question, Steve.
thanks.
While we're discussing this, is it possible to have a resolution just for, let's say, committee meetings to do them remotely?
No, I mean, you're going to want to do an ordinance because it's going to be, a resolution is generally, there isn't, with certain exceptions,
Right.
it doesn't have a duration to
Right.
it. It's for a one-time event. You should have an ordinance that establishes the regulation.
So could we do an ordinance if they were struggling with a specific task for communications? Could we put an ordinance that allowed them for, say, I don't know, 6 months or whatever it is to do that so they could accomplish this task? And I guess it could even be a test case for us to see how it worked. I don't know. It's just something just to resolve that issue and get that off of our plate.
You could.
I am not totally, I hear what the doctor's saying. I'm having some challenge understanding what is stopping the committee. I don't think anything is.
No.
You can, if a vendor can only meet during the day and the committee has some desire to interact with that vendor as a body, then have a meeting here during the day. You guys can come here during the day and then just hook up with the vendor.
Steve, can you tell us, I mean, you basically stopped a communications committee meeting, so we couldn't do something. What was the reason? What was that about?
My understanding was
I don't
that people were trying to set up a Zoom meeting, which is not permitted under the law right now.
But the Zoom meeting would have been
With a vendor.
With the
the
vendor.
vendor.
But also the committee would be on Zoom.
Oh,
Yeah.
that he would have been on Zoom.
So-
Oh, okay.
That-
Everyone was
and-
That was the
invited.
problem.
And the other
So it
thing
wasn't
is,
that meeting we were stopped, it was another meeting.
no, it was that meeting that I'm not stopping. What I'm saying is a committee meeting can meet with a vendor via Zoom if everybody's in person. They had set up a Zoom meeting so that all of the committee members would be on Zoom. And that's not what's not permitted.
Non-elected people can be on the Zoom.
Right.
I
Yes.
The elected people.
I think all the elected people were at that meeting.
No.
No, this was a different one for the vendor who was out of state who wanted to let us know what they had available and they couldn't come in person. And then they wanted to meet during the day. And since some people may need to give 90 days notice before they take time off of work and they have to be there from 7 to 6, they can't attend in person here. So, anyway.
My recollection was that meeting was stopped, so it was, another meeting couldn't have been set up with Zoom because there would have been elected people at that Zoom meeting.
Yes,
Been a
but what,
majority.
The meeting that we were at, there was no problem.
But
Right.
what I've heard Mr. Byron say is that if an individual committee person wanted to talk to a vendor on a Zoom, do it.
Also-
Do it.
also-
He's not objecting to that.
Also, if the quorum sits in the committee chamber, right, all together, and then somebody another committee member zooms in and doesn't participate in the conversation, but gets the information, that's permissible. What you can't do is deliberate with having somebody not being in the room.
You
The-
can
the-
listen.
The Zooming
Exactly right.
person could only listen.
Right.
They wouldn't constitute part of the quorum.
Right.
They could not participate.
Right.
Mhm.
But they could listen. Just like, little Mr. LeMay, if he's out there someplace listening, he can listen.
They just can't ask.
You can't call in
questions.
on line one.
But I
Okay?
think that's important to have though, at least available to people. That they can't be there in person to be able to attend virtual.
I agree, Kathy.
I think
Okay.
Are we in a committee or a council meeting?
committee for now, we can say, and then we can address council later. I mean, if.
Well, that's what I thought. We were going to look at this and see, whether
I
there was
think
a
both.
tolerance for a certain number or certain reasons. Is that?
Yeah, and part of it is you're looking at the ordinance, because there is a significant technology aspect to it. It seems to me that the technology stuff has to be resolved as to, well, what is the technology going to be? So you don't describe an ordinance that can't be performed. You have to understand what your technology capability will be. And then that may reflect as to, well, let's not be either too aggressive on the ordinance, or, gee, we can do more with the ordinance than we maybe thought we could do.
And should we just divide it up for now into committees, because that's technologically easy. You do it by
Well,
your
I-
iPhone or your computer.
I
And
thought this
then
was a
do-
communications committee thing that was being addressed with Mr. Newell. That's what I thought.
Well,
And I think it is. I think you had a meeting. You'll talk about it later.
yeah,
It's not
we're,
just for this, it's for other things.
yeah, well, let me just say that most of the vendors are aware of having that capability as part of the system. So I think when we make the decision as to what council wants to do with the audio video package, that the selection will include some capability like that.
Okay.
So in the ordinance, we could say it doesn't go into effect until we have the capability to perform it.
Well, you don't want to create, I understand what you're saying, but you don't want to create an ordinance that then forces the technology of the communication.
And is it,
company.
right
You-
now,
you
is there a
shouldn't do that.
downside then just to do one for committees then, and we can test it out?
All right, well, why don't we take Mr. Gentili's suggestion? And everyone has sort of banged it around for a while. Everyone has at least the concept, it seems to me, as to what different issues to be grappled with are. And we'll move on to our next
And we did,
agenda.
yeah,
item.
especially because we did just realize it when we walked into the room, so none of us have really read it properly.
Yes, that's right.
Okay. Our next discussion item is a discussion on solar panels. And you all have had, does everyone have the 2018? Okay. As I've mentioned before to council, in 2018, this was discussed. We actually had public hearings regarding it. I think we'll have to go through that process again if this is going to be further engaged with. But in the meanwhile, you have the proposed ordinance, I don't know that it ever got revised, got that far in 2018 to be amended and things like that. I don't recall that we,
This was passed, right?
no,
It was never passed.
council didn't want to address it. in 20. We had public hearings and it went the way of chickens. It just sort of died.
Solar chicken.
So here it is. There are things in the proposed ordinance that may be, I think it has a very rear yard only aspect to the way it's drafted currently. I don't know that that's where council wants to end up with it. We had somebody at a planning meeting who actually made a good point. He said, well, If it always has to be on the rear side of a building because that's where it has to be, that may work for one side of the street, which has the sun oriented right, but it may have no solar efficiency that you'd ever put it in. So effectively, you're then denying it to everyone on the other side of the street. And because if it always has to be there. Now, obviously, not everyone is going to rush out to buy solar panels tomorrow if you adopt this. I'm just throwing out some considerations here for you.
Well, one of the
But
things
Ed-
that's changed though since this is one of the things that's changed, I believe, is that there are more options and more aesthetically acceptable options.
Right.
Well, and the other thing we have to be cognizant of, and I've been talking to some people who I know who don't sell these, who work in the engineering aspect and the technology aspect, not trying to sell us stuff, that there's going to be a lot likely of change coming in the future. So we will have to be ready to pivot, change in a positive way, it's a strange noise, in a more aesthetically pleasing way. The other thing that I don't know if this contemplates, because obviously we just got it, is there are mechanicals currently associated with the solar panels. So where those would be located would also be relevant.
You've actually had it for 7 years.
What's that?
You've had it for 7 years.
What?
It came out in 2018. This was a previous ordinance.
Oh, this was the
I
previous
said it
one?
wasn't passed though.
He's making a joke.
I'm joking. This
Oh.
this was
Oh,
back.
we weren't on council then.
This was back in 2018.
I could figure out what I was doing in 2018 if you want.
You were
Where
in
I
high
was-
school, I think.
Yeah, it's pretty close to that. Exactly. Specifically, that's where I was. But what I was going to say is that there are other things that might be in here that we might contemplate. So currently, I think we use the mechanicals on the roof as our standard. It can be on the front, on the side. It can also be on outbuildings that are in the backyard. So there are a range of items that we might want to contemplate. And of course, we haven't read this, so I don't know if those are contemplated here. But those are some things that came up in our last meeting. ARB had, I think, some significant trepidation about front-mounted solar panels. They referred to the application as very jarring and denied it twice. Planning and zoning allowed it, but that was their read on it. So I think that is another aspect that is not our whole decision, but is part of our decision-making process, understanding the point of view of the people on the Architectural Review Board. So all of those things, when we're reading this, and maybe even seeing what other cities do, could be helpful. It's my,
Steve, is it possible to see what our surrounding communities, if they have
Sure.
ordinances like this? And then we can kind of look and see what they have, and maybe Sheila could distribute that to us before the next meeting. We can all read it and then reconvene at the next meeting and discuss more.
I will have the information from 2018 when we did that same exercise.
Yeah.
So I will also update I will get current versions of whatever people have.
and I guess I would just caution, I don't know if I'm gonna, by then I can get us an update on kind of what's coming. But I think we have to be really aware of that, because if some good options are coming in the next several years, we want to be ready. We want to maybe avail ourselves of the preferable options, as opposed, which, will be less expensive and more attractive. They might not be the absolute cheapest, but they'll be much less expensive
I
than
think we
they
should get current on solar power, because it is, it's still expensive, but when it becomes.
Well, it's coming
affordable,
down and the technology is improving. So hopefully that's what
I
it's
think
looking
it's
like.
time to revisit it. It's been.
I mean, I'm supportive of the concept and, and looking at installation. I think we have to be thoughtful and deliberative and consider what's best for the residents, while also being sensitive to the needs of the neighbors and the neighborhoods and the aesthetic portion of it. Kind of like what I said with our previous Zoom meeting virtual, this is something, I don't think we should rush into it. I think that, this is in front of us. I think it's a good opportunity to have some discussions, really look at where ABR is coming on it, what the technology is out there, and try to anticipate maybe what those needs are, so that there is, that maybe we have a little clearer ordinance to it. I don't want it to be too open-ended. And I will say I do have some concerns about like the solar arrays. I was actually at an educational institution out in Lake County, and they installed them on that campus, and it looks awful. I mean, it really looks bad. The maintenance of the grass underneath it, et cetera, et cetera. It's not attractive at all.
ABR to our next council meeting to discuss this with them.
I don't know if we get a little bit further where we're at and then bring them in. That might be a good idea.
I think we
Kathy,
might,
but
yeah.
I think that there are a couple things on here that it's not just, we wouldn't just be looking at residential use. We do have some other businesses, et cetera, that it's like we need, how does this discussion go? Where does it go?
Well, we
So,
might want to manage it. That's a good point. We might want to manage it differently in different districts.
correct.
That's what's written out.
And we might want to consider that, because what a homeowner would do who is looking for an aesthetic,
Yeah.
while
I'll make it too. I
balancing
think
green energy might not be what
delineated it to U1, U2, U3, and
we might think differently about how a homeowner approaches it, where they're caring about what their house looks like, as opposed to some businesses, we might want to have a little bit more thought put into those buildings.
So what I'm hearing is that Ms. Zatrock is not in favor of us taking the lot to the east of City Hall and putting an array over the lot.
We have a roof that I think that there are better solutions for
Okay.
that. And
Ms. Godey?
no, I would.
Yeah, so, my point in asking for this to be brought up tonight is really, I think this is an opportunity for us to reconsider what our priorities as a city are. And so much of the conversation, so much of the stuff that bubbles up through ABR and planning is around aesthetics. And point taken, that's important. But this is a real solution to a real problem. Aesthetics, to my mind, should take a back seat to the priority of allowing a homeowner to do what they want, to take advantage of something that is going to insulate them from, rising electricity prices, power outages, as long as it's not something, just completely off the wall, right? Like if I can't picture someone putting up, their whole front yard full of an array or something like that. But I don't mind seeing solar panels on the front of someone's house. And, surrounding communities that I've looked at, and Sheila sent the ordinances a couple months ago and we talked about this. The gist of it is preference for facing away from the street. And if that doesn't make sense, put them on the front of your house. And these are not ugly, big, bulky, hideous, massive pieces of equipment anymore. And I know there may be some better stuff coming down the line, but there's people who want to do this now. I'm moving from a house with a slate roof to a house with a roof that could potentially have solar. And you can bet I'm going to look into seeing what's available out there as soon as I can. I know there's an credit expiring at the end of the year. Who knows? Maybe in 3 more years that comes back. I think it's just important not to get too hung up on what stuff looks like, because I think back to the sidewalk conversation and everyone was so worried about what the sidewalks were going to look like. And now you don't even see them. And I feel like it's just, it's going to blend into the background. The more people who get them, it's just going to be part of what our city looks like. And I'm fine with that because I think the benefits far outweigh any potential downside.
Mr. Katz at the planning meeting made an interesting comment. He said he had just returned from Cambridge, Massachusetts. He was at some Harvard thing. And he says, this historic city and community, which truly has noteworthy historic dwellings, he says, it's all over the place. People having solar panels on the roof. I think there is an aesthetic aspect to this, but I think we need to afford people the flexibility to accomplish the task.
Mm.
If that's the only way to do it, there's nothing in my mind, and I've always wondered about it. Whoever decided that asphalt shingles, a piece of tar paper with, chipped asphalt glued to it was somehow, oh, now that's good looking stuff. I don't agree with that. It's like, okay, that's become common in the usage, but there's nothing aesthetically beautiful about those asphalt shingles that, some people who say, well, aesthetically, we don't want to see solar panels. Well, maybe it's such a matter of getting used to those, just like people got used to not having shakes, not having, terracotta tiles. It's just a different way of looking at it. Yes, Dr. Wong.
So as it stands now, if somebody is interested in having a solar panel on their roof or in their yard, what's the current process to do that?
They would have to, well, generally, they'd go in front of the ABR.
Right.
And the ABR goes by what its custom and practice is, which is to default to aesthetically, they don't want them on the front of a house or have not historically wanted them on the front of a house. And they don't approve them that way. And they have allowed them in the design of a house if they're on the rear, but they've gone so far as to say, well, can the neighbor behind see your roof, your back roof? I've seen that conversation.
But they always allow it, and they allow the side also, and they allow all outbuildings. So there have been several cases where there are outbuildings in the backyard that have solar. So, and sometimes the question is which way your house is facing, although the technology is adjusting to this or improving on that, is my understanding. I took a pretty deep dive into this a while recently. But also, sorry, I lost my thought. Some of it has to do with the location. Sometimes it has to do, the decision would come with people maybe not wanting to cut trees. That would have to be another decision, whether it was now an aesthetic decision of wanting to do that. So there's a lot of moving parts, I would say. And there's also moving parts that if we do this, which is not here, it's not necessarily the conversation that everyone wants to have, and it's maybe more boring, but there are mechanicals that go with this. So we would have to decide, okay, maybe we would decide the panels could go on the front, but maybe we're going to say, well, the mechanicals have to go on the back, because generally we try and hide a lot of the mechanicals, either on the side or the back. It depends. So that's another piece of this that we would have to tackle. If we don't tackle that piece of it, then we're not doing the complete job. That's the real conversation. And, we can dismiss ABR. I certainly sometimes maybe agree with them. I don't disagree with them, but that is their role. And for us to disparage them for wanting things to look nice and having that be their role, that's just their call. They're architects. They have experience and expertise. We can disagree with it. We can value it as less than, but I don't want to belittle it. I think that's unfair.
No, and I've not belittled them.
I'm not saying
I
you
hope
did.
you're not interpreting it that way.
I'm not saying it is.
I think ABR, they work hard at it. They provide their, take on things. What I'm saying is, and why I'm very glad that Ms. Godek has taken up this torch to put it back on our agenda, is that I think that the city deserves the council making intentional decisions, be it put them all on the back, put them all on the front, never put them on the front. I think that the ABR and the community deserve intentionality here so far as what can the residents expect, and why is it going to be this way? And I think there's going to have to be comment that we receive ultimately from the community as to what do they want, just like they weighed in and said, no, we want walkability. And there may have been there were people on the council who didn't want walkability, and the community responded saying, no, we do. And that may or may not be what happens with solar. I don't know. And whether or not we come to a decision where where you come to a decision where you only want, some limited with some flexing in it. Okay, that can be too, but I think an intentional decision needs to be made. Mr. Gentili?
With all due respect to Ms. Godek, I think one of our duties is to keep up standards for the city. And, things that you may think have faded into the background haven't. We're gonna be big users of sidewalks, but they haven't disappeared because they're right in front of my house. There isn't one in front of your house, so
I'd
I
love it if
think
there was
you have
one in
to,
my house.
you have to, look at the bigger picture. And we need.
I am trying to
we
look. That's
need-
exactly what I'm trying to do, Tony, is look at the bigger picture.
Okay, well, you just said that nobody sees the sidewalks anymore. Well, trust me, I see them because
Okay.
they're being built right in front of my house. They're not being built in front of your house. So,
And I do
we
think,
can't only be for ourselves as members of council.
And I'm not, Tony. I am thinking
I'm
about the
just saying with all
person.
due respect,
Hold on, one at a time, please.
I'm thinking of the person who recently had to go before various committees 3 times to get her solar panels installed. And I'm not faulting ABR for their decisions because that is clearly the guidance right now. I'm saying that this is an opportunity for us as a council to think about what our priorities really are.
Ms. Godek, to
Right,
clarify,
and
the
your
guidance
priorities
to
and mine may not be the
ABR.
same.
Hold on.
Oh, sorry.
Let's try to avoid just the free-for-all back and forth.
Please, Tony, go ahead.
Well, I just wanted to say that Jackie seems to be willing to abandon the standards.
I don't think that's. what
Yeah,
you said.
and that's
That's
taking
what-
it a bit far.
Well,
You actually
with
said
all
you
due
didn't care.
respect, I think that's what I heard.
And to clarify, while there is guidance that mechanicals shouldn't be on the front of roofs, ABR could have just said, we're not passing this because mechanicals can't be on the front of roofs, on a roof. But they did not say that. They specifically did not say that. ABR specifically said that the appearance was very jarring. That is their direct quote. They did not mean that in a good way or in a surprise way. They meant very jarring in a negative way. That is their assessment, not mine. It is not because they were hamstrung by an ordinance and they want to do this, or they believe it's the preference to do this. It is because they did not need to say that. They said it because they think it's aesthetically not pleasing and detrimental to the appearance of the community.
Right, and
We
that's their
can-
job, right? Like to
That's-
protect appearances.
Their job is a lot of things. That's one piece of their job. They have a lot of, as far as the structural, as far as home values and the community, as far as safety and health, all kinds of issues they address. But one of the issues they address is aesthetics, which goes to livability and goes to property values. And so it's not just some silly, shallow thing or some, and I, as you know, care very much about green energy and having a clean environment and making those choices. But we have to do this thoughtfully because this is important. I'm quickly reading this, which we got when we walked in today.
No, we got this yesterday afternoon.
Well, I didn't see it yesterday afternoon, when things come late in the day and we have personal matters to attend,
Or meetings.
or
last night.
meetings to attend, which I did last night for several hours.
Yeah.
Okay, so unnecessary. We get most of these things at the last minute, that's fine. The point is this includes solar arrays in people's, I suppose, backyards, possibly front yards, and maybe that's not offensive either. But I think that a lot of people in the community would be distressed if their neighbors made their entire front and backyard into a solar array.
I don't know that this is like a proposed starting point. I think this is like a starting point for a discussion.
Well, it
That's
is
the
a
impression.
proposed
It was the
starting point.
ordinance in 2018.
Right.
No,
This
it was a
was-
draft that council chose at that time not to pursue. So like I said at the beginning comments, I said, I don't think this ever got amended or addressed. It was just dropped. So this is not put out there as, oh, this was the proposal that didn't get passed. This is something that to start, just like the other that we saw earlier about, whatever it was. we were looking at. Virtual meetings. This, the 2018 is presented to you as to kick off a discussion. Here are some things, some thoughts that you can be thinking about. Maybe you don't, maybe you like solar arrays, maybe you don't.
Mhm.
And ABR may be totally correct aesthetically that, gee, we never want these things not on the back of a house. Don't
That's
have
their
a hard, that house, that was a conclusion that was being made. That's why I'm saying it. Council needs to grapple with this and make intentional decisions about it.
Mayor, can I just, I don't think we have to make choices between aesthetics and the functionality. I think things have improved so much in the last 7 years, it would be shocking to you. I think what would be helpful is if we could get perhaps an expert to come here who can show how things have changed and what the possibilities are, because I have no idea what they are. I just did a quick look online, and there's a ton of improvements that have been made.
But what I've been cautioned about is that anybody who's selling it is not an expert and can't give you a clean read on it. So it has to be somebody who has a more
Really?
global expertise. What?
Really?
Well, they're selling you a product, and so they're going to sell you their product. They might not want to upsell people to like the next level because they're afraid they won't make the sale.
But
That's
isn't-
what I've been cautioned about.
But isn't that what the communications committee is busy inviting vendors in
Right.
to present about things?
Exactly.
They have that
we're-
exact same issue that you just described.
Well, this is a little, I think this is a different product. That's what I've been told. It's fine.
I also, like, I have some questions about, like, as a municipality, like, what happens to these when they've run their useful life? And what does,
It's a
I-
good
I-
question. I
like,
have no idea.
I don't know. I would like to know, like, what happens when they're uninstalled from a roof? What does that look like underneath, et cetera? Like, I think that
You're going to
there's a
fix your
lot-
roof at a minimum, I assume.
I would imagine, but I don't know what it attaches to. Like, do you just take them off? Do you recycle them? Like, what happens? I don't know enough about it, but I think it's like we may need to look at that as well.
That's a fair
So-
question as to what has to happen. All right, is there anything more on this topic, or are we beating it up enough for tonight?
So what's follow-up, Steve? Will we get some?
I'm going to invite
Yeah.
somebody.
Okay.
I'm going to invite somebody with some background in the topic or somebodies to visit with us at a future council meeting. And we will learn something about solar panels.
And I understand
I can get
about-
other municipal ordinances. I've got that as.
Right.
I do understand about Ms. Waltman's concern that certain experts are trying to sell you something, but it is possible, I believe, to have a well-rounded presentation about what some of the possibilities are. And keeping in mind that, yes, they are selling something, but I don't know how else you get the information. Other
Yeah,
than,
I mean,
But we're not buying anything from them, so.
Well, yeah.
Wait,
but-
you told me you wanted a raise on the plot.
Yeah.
So we took the vendors for the AV equipment into a committee. Is there a committee to take this into, to look into it in more detail and then present to council? Or, I mean, like with AVR or?
Well, you need a council member, I would think, as part of it. So I don't think
Or,
ABR would be
road and infrastructure or some,
parts of beautification.
because,
It's not the city's infrastructure, or the
but there's no,
Pepper Pike government's
Right.
infrastructure. So I don't know. I think it's appropriate. It seems everyone on council needs to be
Yeah.
brought up to speed on
I
this.
think we
So
keep it
I
there.
don't have a problem bringing someone to council to talk about this. Seems appropriate. Okay, we'll move on. Committees and department heads. Mr. Newell, you had a communications meeting last night, I believe.
yes, and what's interesting is we're going right into the process that you, I think, would have to do with the solar panels. Due to the efforts of Councilperson Wong and myself, we did gather several different people who are in this business. They all have a different perspective on things. They all have a different approach, and came up with basically what we were doing was discussing the upgrading of certain basic audiovisual setups here in the council chambers, which consists now of that one camera. You can see that in the back there. And that audio thing right over there, which is a mixer, which has been here for quite a while, but at the time it was put in, it was the state of the art. It's not anymore. Our problem here is that we have limited video capability for home viewers. Viewers cannot identify who is speaking here unless they can memorize everybody's voice, because you just can't see it from that. So we have technical reliability issues, of course. Right now, the system is up to one person to operate, and that person also has other duties. So internet interruptions can end our live stream permanently. We can't get back on after we've been knocked off. These are all things that we really shouldn't have to deal with. And right now we have no remote meeting capability, either through council members or a vendor or residents. So essentially, we discussed 4 different options. One is a full service solution. Somebody comes in, they set up everything, they switch the cameras while we're having a meeting. They literally run the meeting, and they have some, the lower third, if you ever watch TV, and the lower third tells you who is speaking, the character generator. So example, when Mr. Sheehy is speaking, it would say his name and people would know he's city engineer. That's a very nice thing for people at home, because they may not know who all the people we're talking about are. Verbatim transcripts they will do, and they also have something called a sound search capability. It's an option where, let's say we were talking about in 2018, and we had this system back then, and we were talking about solar panels. You would be able to search the archives for solar panels, and it would tell you what meeting that took place, and it would actually tell you when solar panels were mentioned, and you could go back there and look at that. It's a spectacular system. Obviously, we're starting from this point forward. You can't retroactively do that. So these are all things that I think a lot of our residents would get more involved in what the city is doing if they could go back and search some of these things. Imagine being able to go back and search what was talked about during walkability and see how everybody's position was back then. You could get a lot of information there. Another option is kind of a sort of like this, but with some automation. And that means that they would install equipment. It's likely to be 3 cameras. 2 of them are up on this wall. I'm sorry, 2 of them on that wall to give us different views of the council, and then 1 of them on that wall so we could see whoever's speaking. We probably should have a podium if we wanted to have speakers, so that the speakers could be seen and heard. You'd have to have a microphone up there. This other system has some automation where you have a little iPad that you could switch cameras, but again, that would be somebody would have to do that. Some of the video switching can be automatic. It's not as good as having somebody do it. The other options are just a basic equipment upgrade, and that is to keep our current audio system, which does work pretty well, and improve cameras and connections. Maybe have fixed cameras, maybe 2 or 3, where you have a split screen on the screen. The other thing is too that right now our equipment here, as you can see, the wires are on the floor. That wire goes up kind of over the window. That's not a good installation, and it's making do right now. Unfortunately, we've done pretty well with it. And then again, as we've talked about, possible remote participation from people, either council people or vendors or whatever. That we should, what we're planning on doing is to have a recommendation for council by the next council meeting. And obviously it's going to be up to council to decide which way we're going to go on this. It's not an easy decision. There's pros and cons for everything. The one company that does everything, they work for, all they do is government stuff, and they do a really good job of it. The other options, they're better than what we have now, and they're good options, but we'll have to decide what it is that we do. And the other thing is, somebody brought up, we have excellent members of the communications committee now. I really think we got very good participation from our new members. And we have to weigh our AV improvements against other communication priorities, such as, letting people know when the sewer is going to go, what day the sewer is going to be installed on such and such a street. A lot of people would love to do things like that. And that could be part of the communications as well. So that's kind of what we did. And I also want to show, thanks to Mr. Bartasavich, that's what the meeting looked like. We did it last night down in the basement. And it's a great picture. You really did a nice job. The framing is perfect. But it was one of the best communications meetings we've had, I think. And I hope the fruits of our debate will pay off in the next meeting.
That's exciting, Scott. Thanks.
It's exciting to
Thank
me.
you,
Thanks. Thanks for saying that.
Thank you, Scott. We also had last night, it was a busy meeting night. We had a planning commission meeting where we passed 2 and tabled 3.
Yes, we did. We had 2 variance requests for generators. They were a little different, actually, each. Both had topographical, like land issues as far as the placement of the generator, because generally the generator needs to be tucked away. One was a very obvious place to kind of shelter it behind trees. The other one was a little tougher because it was really on the front of the house. It was not preferable, but there was a very steep hillside. There were a lot of complications. And both variances were passed with the provision that landscaping cover and block it and that it be maintained. And that's been recorded so that if for some reason something happened to the landscaping, it doesn't necessarily, especially for the first homeowner who really can kind of tuck it away right now, doesn't really affect them, but it affects down the road. So if something happens to the bushes that are there, in the second situation, ABR is going to be brought in to make sure that substantial landscaping is put in. So those were those were the 2 generators. The next item was a shed. It was a side yard setback variance. It was deemed by Mr. Smirgan to be very substantial, and we tried to work through a solution, but we weren't getting there, and so we tabled it. We had a pretty full agenda, so you can imagine. But we tabled it. Hopefully we can work through that solution. Same with the second one, also a side yard setback variance, a little different because this was closer somewhat to the street or more visible from the street. It was alongside the driveway, which actually came back on the side of the house a bit. So similar situation, also tabled. And then finally we had a request or comments on a conditional use permit request for, and I'm going to pull this out so I can look at my notes a bit more, for a property that is alongside and currently owned by Beachbrook. I don't know if you recall, but there was kind of a back and forth where Beachbrook had transferred land, then it was somehow errantly or some situation like that, I'm not quite clear, transferred back from Heritage to Beachbrook. In any case, the person who spoke actually was not technically, I guess, the applicant, because that would be Beachbrook, the owner of the land, but they were proposing to construct 4 buildings that would contain 56, basically, I guess, housing, elder housing, nursing home type housing, and pretty sizable. It is not compliant with our current zoning, so that was a conversation we had, whether this was appropriate. And there were other conversations. I could go into it more if anyone wants to, whether a conditional use permit was even appropriate under our zoning laws. Of course, people in the community and, would have concerns about issues that something like this would cause. It is not compliant with our current ordinance. So I think that sums it up. And it's also not a non-conforming use, if that was touched on too.
So I have a question about the first shed that was, they were asking for like 4 to 5 feet away from the fence, and per the ordinance, it would have had to be 15 feet
Correct.
away from the fence. So a couple questions. First of all, I mean, can we modify this ordinance? Can we change this ordinance? Because that seems like a crazy amount of space to be required. I don't know if there's any appetite for that. I'm just thinking like, you know, the ordinance is like 10 feet plus half the height of the building.
It's 15 feet.
Right. But I'm like the ordinance itself. so
Yeah,
10
yeah,
feet
I
plus
see
half
what
the
you're
height.
saying, yes.
So, you know, I'm just trying to picture that in a lot of yards. That's just like a huge unnecessary waste of space. That is probably like a bigger discussion. But my question in this case is, you know, I know definitely not steeped in, you know, any Ohio laws surrounding planning, but I know that there have been ways in the past to get around this practical difficulty requirement. And you could feel, you know, the planning commission like trying to figure out a solution, because on its face, I don't think that the ordinance as implemented would have been serving any purpose, right? Like, you know, you could look at the drawing of the yard. I don't think anyone sitting at this table was saying like, yeah, that shed needs to be 15 feet away from the fence, right? And this is the tricky part about ordinances. Like, how do you make them specific enough that they have teeth, yet broad enough that they don't unnecessarily, you know,
No, I take your
punish,
point.
right?
Yeah, I take your
So
point.
I
but-
know in the past, there's been situations where it's not necessarily a practical difficulty, but, and Steve, I don't know if you can speak to this. There's like the public purpose discussion. If like a public purpose isn't advanced, that can be grounds for, you know, permitting something that doesn't necessarily meet the bar of practical difficulty. Is that correct, Steve?
Well, that there are different legislative standards that
Okay.
can be applied. The practical difficulty standard is the one that the Supreme Court has recognized as controlling and
Mhm.
legitimate. But, you know, if the concept is if the purpose of the ordinance isn't being advanced in a
Yeah.
particular instance,
Mhm.
then the ordinance shouldn't be applied in that instance.
Okay. So I guess that was my question, because, you know, I came out of the meeting thinking like there has to be give, right? And so is that where like the give would be found?
I think
if-
there is give though. Like you know, I've sat through, and we don't get a ton of these. Maybe it's surprising. And this was a bigger one, so it was more of it was closer to an outbuilding, starting to be closer to an outbuilding than a shed. But
I don't think, they didn't even have a shed picked out yet.
no, they
No.
didn't. But the size, based on the size, it was closer to an outbuilding
Okay.
than a shed. I mean, it was getting pretty big. It was. I could tell
Wasn't
you,
it
it
10 by
was.
12?
No, that was the other one. We're talking about, that was the second one. This one, I would have to look, I can find the square foot. Oh, this is the wrong paper. I think it was bigger than that. That was the second one that was 10 by 12. But anyway, usually well, two things. There is some give on some of those, the feet there, some of some of that. So there is give on some of those. We've had quite a few of those. Sometimes it has to do with the placement. And that was one of the issues that came up in this discussion. We didn't have a lot of information about, you know, we had nothing documented about issues with other placements. So like closer to the house where oftentimes they're placed, some like I think Mayor Bain suggested behind the house, which is one common placement. Sometimes they're placed further back. And so we've never had a situation where it's suggested that they should be infringing on the middle of the yard. That would be, that's unheard of. I mean, it might seem that way based on just the specific one location that was shown in the picture, but it doesn't really play out that way. And there is a lot of back and forth and give and take. That's why we tabled it, because, you know, a lot of the time I think, and I've been there, when different people on the commission will make a good suggestion. So I thought actually the mayor's suggestion was very good to put it closer to the building. And that, you know, we've had a range of those. A lot of the time when we table it and they come back, people have had time to kind of look at it, talk to the vendor, because usually it's a vendor, it's not an architect.
Mhm.
And they come up with a solution. So it kind of helps everybody take a breath and so I'll be curious to see where they go, because that's how a lot of them tend to go.
But also, it sucks that they have to come back twice.
Well,
Yeah.
I don't think
It
so.
really-
I mean, I don't,
Yeah, it does. I mean, if I, so that's,
I guess it
that's
depends.
to my point where
and there
I
is a
think
public
that
purpose.
this, the ordinance seems overly strict. 10 feet plus half the height of the building. That's a lot of feet.
Well, I guess all zoning, I guess it depends what your position is on, if you believe that zoning is important for aesthetics, for protecting a neighbor, for
Well, sure, but
protecting property values. So, I mean, all zoning you can have, I mean, this is like a more theoretical conversation, and it's a fair conversation. I agree, like every community makes a different decision. I think a lot of our zoning looks like similarly situated cities like Shaker Heights, Chagrin Falls. They have a little bit more rigorous zoning laws with the intent of, I think, protecting the look, neighbors, property values, and there are other reasons. We can make different decisions, but I think that's a community decision. One area of trepidation I have is that a lot of people have moved here with the current zoning code in place, and so that's their expectation when they built things in their house, when they bought their house, when they invested in their house. And so I do feel some duty to protect people from, one shed, one, thing that doesn't look great. It doesn't mean much, but cumulatively it sort of can be, significant. And, one person suggested to me, and I don't know if this might be taking it a little far, but, just, I guess I would say the cumulative impact could be significant. It would change the look of the city in a way that would never be positive. It might be functionally more positive. Aesthetically, I don't think it certainly would improve it. So that's something we look at. And, and the other thing is there are people who have done, there are a few instances where people do something that looks more like an outbuilding, and there has been more leniency. I saw one the other day when I was going on one of the streets like Meadowlark or Creekside, I can't remember. And it was more of an outbuilding that matched the house.
Mhm.
So in that case, it was easier but it was more of an architectural look.
Mhm.
So it's complicated, but I do think planning and zoning looks at them each situation individually. So if there's like some topographical issue that's documented, that would definitely be taken into concern. Like if there's a hill that drops,
Yeah.
that was a great example with putting. We would not have wanted to put that generator on the front of the house. I don't even think the people who lived there would have wanted to put the generator on the front of the house. But there was a slope, and there were other reasons having to do with gas lines, and nobody wants to get into all that minutia. But it's a good conversation to have back and forth, and it's really productive. I mean, we had a great situation with a front-facing garage issue on Lander and South Woodland a couple of years ago, where we were able to just have a conversation, kind of flip the plan to actually the original plan that they presented us with, and it was perfect. And I think everybody was really happy, and the house looks fantastic now. So those conversations are good, and that's why we're there. That's why we were there for several hours. It was fine.
Yeah. I'm still stuck on this, 10 plus a half height. It seems really tall, but if
So
the
I think-
planning commission
Okay.
doesn't
It was
think
good.
it's
12 by
an issue,
16.
then
Listen, I think
Yeah.
what you're
192 square feet or
Mhm.
something.
bad facts make bad law. This is
right.
this actually was a tough
Yeah.
situation, because generally can be found the practical difficulty. Doesn't mean that, oh my God, you could put it, 100 feet back in your lot and you wouldn't need a variance,
Mhm.
because that's not
Right.
a solution for people. And since zoning denigrates at first instance the right of a person to use and enjoy their property, it's almost the burden of the city to say, no, you can't use your property the way you want to. So I think there is a drift that the city should try to find a way that people can use their property without insulting and impacting negatively their neighbor. And that's why I totally hear what you're saying. A lot of times it doesn't make sense. Why does that have to be 15 feet? It really depends upon every variance we grant is fact driven, should be fact driven. And that's why I consistently say it is not a precedent for the next one to come along. They're all different.
Yep.
They may have similarities which compel, well, you're going to end up with the same result, but it's not as a precedent. Oh, you did it before, so you have to do it now. So there have been situations with side setbacks in the last year where people had greenhouses attached, either the greenhouse itself or attached, but they had trees. And there was, a reason that, you should be able to scoot it over so that the structure you want to build works, that it's effective. This one, he just has, the resident at this point in time just has a blank slate of a backyard. There's no tree in this backyard. There was some grade, which you couldn't really tell in the meeting very well, what his grade issues may be. And those grade issues described better may actually create some difficulty for him that, we could, understand and,
Yeah.
try to accommodate what his wishes. But right now, all we're seeing is this empty backyard and there's no real reason. That's why and he had a misimpression, that fellow. He thought he could only
that's
set
right.
it back from the gate entering the backyard a certain distance. And he was just misinformed regarding the law itself.
Fair enough.
And he had maybe some alternatives that I don't think appreciated going into the meeting of other places. And that was why I suggested that, he wanted to confer with his spouse about it and see, we have maybe a different palette that we could be looking at. And it just seemed reasonable to, let's back off for a second. It may be right back at the conversation we had, but at least take the opportunity to talk about your other things that may be available to
Yeah.
you. You may not need a variance,
Okay.
depending on where you want to put this thing.
Okay.
So it was just, my goal as the chair of the planning commission is always to try to work with people, to think of ourselves as a court of equity, not just of law, and to get to a solution that works for the community, for the public purpose aspect, but also works for the resident. And it's a bit of a balancing act sometimes.
Yeah.
And it's not a black and white answer.
Right.
And a lot of
Okay.
time there's compromise that comes in. I mean, that's part of it. That's part of the conversation.
So
So anyway, that's what happened. And the final item that was also tabled, I don't know if I said that. That's something that I would want to highlight to council because it's a more unusual thing that has come to us. So I would want to draw everyone's attention to that conversation and look into it on your own, I guess, is what I would say.
thank you. I think that's all of our committees since we last met. Don, can you update us regarding the trails where we are? South Woodlands moved along.
South Woodlands moving along quite well. They started here on Shaker. That's also moving well. They're both underway and they're making good progress, taking advantage of really ideal weather. That's how they're doing their thing here.
Good temperature to pour concrete.
Just about
Yes.
right.
Have they been addressed about the slip up on the driveways where they did two in a row?
We've talked to them
I
about the
think they
spacing
did
on the
that again
driveway.
down the road a little bit.
There were, and sometimes there's nuances there where a resident has requested their driveway to get done ahead of things like that.
Oh,
So it's not like literally every other. You might do two, skip two, do two, but then they've had people say, I'm gonna be out of town, can you do it now?
yeah, they'd have to let the homeowner who can't park in their driveway with their next door neighbor, so they're gonna have to make a deal or arrangements with another neighbor, luckily, mine is in every other one, and we didn't have that problem, but I know that there was an accident in the street on Tuesday night, I think it was, or Wednesday night.
Oh, because someone had to park in the street?
So, yeah, they had to park in the street. They were,
Oh.
they were told they could park on South Woodland. And the car was hit.
Oh, that sounds-
They can, but they can park on the South Woodland. Whether or not it's a good exercise of discretion to park on South Woodland is a different conversation perhaps.
Fair enough.
The,
They're just not convenient to a side street.
I get it. I get it. No, it was an unfortunate circumstance, very much. Thank you, Don. We all sit on the salt, Mr.
Yeah, salt price came in and it's substantially higher than last year. 63.99, I believe. Where we were at 40,
Wow.
Wow.
49.99.
Do we have any leftovers?
Do we have leftover from last year? Oh, yeah, I mean, there's enough there, but we're still committed to buying at that cheap price, but substantially increased, which is kind of surprising. It bucks the trend that usually happens, where you use a lot and then the price goes down for some. Well, I think they're trying to make up for all the sales that they didn't make. And that's why the prices,
They've had a lot of light seasons. for
light
every-
seasons, and they're trying to recuperate.
Yeah.
And it could be the trucking industry that's part of that, and it could be the salt industry. So,
We're going to experience a lot of pricing going up.
yes, it's everywhere, so, yeah. And then, the painting has started, all the long lines are painted, long lines being single or double yellows and the white line next to the road, so, and then they'll start doing arrows and onlys and all of that stuff very soon.
Okay, well, thank you. So far as, I don't really have a lot that I need to go into tonight. We've had a long meeting already. So coming up next, beginning of, it's October, right? Yeah. When is the Harvest Fest?
October the 5th,
October 5th. Tickets
Sunday.
are on sale now. I'd encourage anyone who wants to go, and I hope you all want to go, to secure your tickets. It's a great day. There'll be a Bike with the Mayor event earlier in the day at 1 o'clock. The kids' events begin at 3 o'clock, and the dinner begins at 5 o'clock. So it's always a very good time. It's a clam bake. You can get chicken, steak, along with your clams. Order extra clams if you want. It's always a very fun event. And we've been fortunate to have really good weather. And you know, it's just going to be good weather again because it's always sunny in Pepper Pike. And that's what I have this evening. Council, do you have anything or?
I have a couple of things. One thing that we need to take up, and I don't know if we could do it here, is that we sort of have an unwritten rule, or maybe it's a written rule, that no resident can serve on two committees. And I wondered whether that applied to the ABR as well as the committee. So I think we need to discuss that. This came up that someone who was on ABR also wanted to be on infrastructure and road and infrastructure. So we have to figure that out.
I think the rule that you're referencing is the committee rule that council has authority over. You've established the rule that it's one committee per resident, so you need to.
So does ABR count?
Is that actually in the ordinance?
It's in the ordinance. It's in the ordinance dealing with council committees, but
Right.
I'm not
Because
certain that
the
it
council
applies.
appointed someone to two committees just this year.
That was a mistake.
Well, I'm not certain that the commission or the other public body that takes action is subject to the one committee per
Because
resident.
that's not really a committee.
Right.
That's why I bring up the question.
That's not a
And so if you wanted to prohibit that, you would need to make it clear in your ordinance that you cannot serve on a council committee if you're also on one of the other civil service or ABR or planning commission.
So there's no prohibition.
There isn't a prohibition
No,
right
on
now.
its face, it's not a committee, so I think it's okay.
And Don produced these pavement maps for us, and they're really good. I had Sheila print them on big paper, so they're very readable. We'll be having a road and infrastructure meeting soon. And the good news is that there aren't many roads that are in fair condition or fair to poor. Most of them are better than that. So it's not something that we need to study now, but I thought it's always very interesting to see this on, in a graphic way. And the only other thing I would say is that, not having a resident on finance, that was a one-time anecdote. I was on finance for most of the time that you've been mayor, and I don't recall that, but I think that's an anecdote. Maybe we should have tried more to have someone on.
We could, the question was, have we ever had it? And I
Yeah.
was just trying to
Yeah,
respond to that.
I think that having resident participation is a good thing in general, and that's why I proposed it for the advisory committee.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else?
I wanted to just bring up and remind everyone that the Parks and Beautification Committee is looking for additional members, maybe, at least one, up to two. The application is found on the city website, pepperpike.org. If you scroll down, you can submit it online, and they are due by Friday, September 26th. So we have received a couple applications so far, but if anybody else is inclined to submit their application, we would love to see that. So thank you.
Thank you. Audience comments?
Yes, I have a comment and a question. The comment, Richard Ferguson, 29200 Edsteel Road. Comment is for the solar, discussing solar panel, rather than get a vendor with Kent State, Case Western, get an academic, environmental, who would give you unbiased opinion. Now, my question is, to circle back to the investment advisory committee, how does the process currently work? Does the city or the council direct Fifth Third Bank where to invest things? Does Fifth Third Bank come in and say, this is our plan next year and it's approved? If you have an advisory committee, will they be able to redirect what Fifth Third Bank is saying? That's confusing to me. Just
Okay.
how do
Fair
those
question.
pieces fit?
The way our investments work now is that the treasurer, Mr. Reckentor, is in charge of making investment decisions. He works with financial advisors from Fifth Third Bank who, are in the market and represent a significant number of communities, both very large and smaller. And they make recommendations and they work together as a team to make these decisions. Those decisions ultimately are also, reviewed by the finance committee so far as understanding where the investments are. Our investments are published every month and they're available for anyone to see where a lot of the investments are at a particular point in time and the value of the investments.
Thank you.
Okay. Anyone else? Mr. Bartasavich.
Yeah, George Bartasavich, 29600 Shaker Boulevard. First of all, I want to thank Mayor Bain and Don Sheehy and the residents for voting for sidewalks. I mean, I can't believe we're finally here. We got it. Our neighbors are excited about the sidewalks coming in. We've already discussed parking situation where our neighbors across the street has come over and said, hey, you're more than welcome to park in our property across the street. So we have that resolved. And I talked to the contractor and he's all excited about doing the project. And he also told me that they have a temporary street light sign, which is going to work very well. And I think probably many of you have seen it already. And I think it's pretty cool for them to control the traffic coming down Shaker. I talked to a lot of residents while I'm out basically campaigning. So it's amazing how many people have said, how can we get sidewalks on our street? And I'm happy for Jackie to take on that task of reaching out to our residents and seeing how this can move forward with some of the heavily trafficked streets. And I also went on I was on a cul-de-sac, and I met some people with their kids and riding the bike and playing ball. And they said, how can we get sidewalks? I said, it's very difficult. We had a difficult task of getting it through council, but I'll tell you, the best thing to do is get signatures from everyone on your cul-de-sac, and we can present it to give it to Jackie or the council, so they can take a look at it and move forward on some of these busy streets. So once again, I commend everyone that was involved in getting our sidewalks approved. Thank you so much.
Thank you, sir. Anyone else? Yes, sir.
John Eric Schmidt, 29449 Bolingbrook. Just a comment about all the discussion on the aesthetics of solar panels. I find utility poles and utility lines very ugly. We live with them because they serve a purpose. So I don't know why so much is being made out of the aesthetics of solar panels. They're going to serve a very useful purpose.
Good observation. Thank you. Yes, sir.
Bob Rice, 2445 Edgewood Trace. I've talked about solar before, and I'm all in on solar. I think the council needs to make the policy. The ABR will always likely say it's ugly, it doesn't fit, we want it on the back only, but I don't think that's not their position. That's not who should be making that policy. The elected officials of the city should make the policy about how we're going to go forward on solar. And I made the allusion last time to Arizona, Hawaii, California. Your house looks aesthetically bad if you don't have solar panels in like your neighbors. And I go back to Tony, I understand what you're saying. The sidewalk is right in front of your house. What Jackie's point, I believe, is if you go down Lander now, you don't notice the sidewalk. Once it's complete, and it's cleaned up.
Jackie can speak for herself.
Tony, let the man just make his comment, please.
But her point is well taken, that if you go to places, Cambridge, Massachusetts, or California, people are blind to the fact that there's solar panels. They actually blend in, but it's going to be the council that should be making this. The ADR, that's not their policy to make, in my opinion. So we need to up the game, and the council needs to take that one on.
Thank you, sir. Anyone else?
Mr. Buskovich, 29579, Dayton Boulevard. The comment on solar panels and generators, power interruptions and problems with power are not gonna go away. The only thing that helps with self-sufficiency that the city can possibly help implement, I think, is the long-term advantages of the community, including the safety of residents, because, if you go without power, I once was on an 8th floor of a building and went without power for 2 days in an apartment. That is not a nice situation. Fortunately, it was in the summer and not in the winter. And here, a couple weeks ago, we lost power almost for a day. So, and the situation with the national grid is as bad. So, I understand the aesthetics, and I think the ABR does a great job, but the practicalities, especially from the safety standpoint, should maybe be looked at heavily. A comment on what God is doing with the long overdue need to increase our official and the number of cameras and all this down. Pretty much what I see in other places. One thing I've been hearing in the presentation is that when you broadcast, making available all the audio visual presentations to the audience. So when council is looking at a document, if you're sitting out there, you should be able to see it on a split screen someplace.
That's part of, that's included, that'll be included.
Okay, thank you. You make your then.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Gaskin?
Jean Gascoigne, 30496 West Landerwood. First of all, I'm concerned since the solar panel talk, Brad and I are having wind turbines installed in our front yard. Okay, that was just.
That was a joke, or you're having wind turbines? Okay.
I just want to say again, about the ADA and the steps and the elevator. Somebody tried to park, I just think, let me put it this way. I have brought this up before. I don't know if there's what I have to do to have council and the mayor come and do something about fixing and complying with ADA here in the city hall. We don't have the dignity for the person. I'm having a hard time putting my thoughts together. I think our image, and I think that our the dignity of the person with the disability, but our image to the public. I think that all the talk. I love the gate. I love the sidewalks. I love the ice cream socials. But I am really upset, disappointed, whatever you want to call it. Somebody tries to come in the elevator, police cars there. What the hell? I mean, we have beautiful front door and the doors aren't even going to be wet. I'm carrying on about this mayor, but I would like to know, and I would like somebody to let me know and to take action about the ADA. Disability rights are human rights. This is crazy.
All right, the city is compliant with
Again.
ADA law. Thank you.
They're what, complying or
We
allowed
are
to?
compliant with ADA law.
I know that they are. You want to take the elevator down in the dark in the back? I mean, I am so disappointed in that response. The dignity. I know when I had my new hip, thank God I had people come with me. I was on a cane, but I don't even want to talk about those steps out there and the lighting. But for you to say that, Mayor, that you're
No,
working
I'm
on it. or
simply,
that
I
we're-
didn't say.
Don't interrupt me. You always say.
Ms. Gascoigne, please don't yell.
Okay,
Please don't
you
raise your
always
voice like
tell
that.
me
No one
Here we go
yelled
again.
at you. Thank you.
No,
Anyone else?
I wasn't
Yes,
finished.
yes, Ms. Grace.
I guess I was.
I would like for her to finish if.
Go ahead.
Please finish.
If you can
I
address
was
us without
here.
raising your voice and
Oh,
without
I
yelling, I would
You
be
interrupt
happy to
me
have you
again
finish your
and
comment.
again.
Be happy to have you finish your comment.
Okay, we may be compliant with ADA, but I think it just looks awful. If you ever had to use the back elevator, or if you had to come in with a cane and those beautiful white steps, I mean, let's get over ourselves, okay? Get over it, Pepper Pike. Talk about image and, okay, I'm finished.
Thank you. Ma'am?
Grace Barber, 38,000 Shaker Boulevard. In connection with that, I have spoken to several council members and one in particular that tried to get the handicap accessibility on the agenda. And I was told by that council member that you specifically, Mayor, said no, that they should bring it up as a council member. You would not put it on the agenda. So it's fallen on the wayside. I contacted you. I wrote you a letter 2 years ago regarding handicap accessibility. And the result of that letter was you to put up a sign that everyone had to leave the building after the meeting. You were not treating the handicapped person the same as other residents. I don't think that's handicap ADA compliance. A handicapped person is being treated differently. We have the resources. We have close to 30 million. You can't make it better. in connection with what Gina is saying. It's just wrong, dignity wise, whatever.
Thank you. Anyone else? All right, then we stand adjourned.
About potentially trying to kickstart the